Hey everybody, welcome to the Bloody Awesome Movie Podcast. I'm Jon Berk, and with me from across the pond is Matt Hudson from whatIwatchtonight.co.uk. Matt, so you got a nice little turtle mug? Was that a turtle mug, or am I seeing things? What was the mug?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mug. John, this is an auspicious occasion. Is this our fourth
It is.
BAMPie Awards now?
I think so. I think this is the
As
fourth
hosts,
annual BAMPies.
we should know this, but I don't. I think it is. No, it is because we did one BAMPies where we didn't tell each other what we were voting on. The second one we did tell each other in advance. Last year we didn't.
And then last year.
Number four, this is the biggest award show of the year, my friend. We've got dressed up. I've got a Ghostbusters Christmas jumper on. Look, we're only just finished Christmas, so.
Okay. Matt's favorite movie shirt. Favorite movie, and also his favorite movie shirt.
It is. I almost wore that as well.
On the sleeve.
Has it got anything on the back? Not that I'm going to make you stand up and turn around, but
it would be impossible for me to easily stand up and turn around. I have like literally a table tray on my lap, and then a table in front of me that houses my computer. So I got a whole lot going on. Yeah, if I have an emergency bathroom break, it's gonna be like knocking things over to get to it, kind of thing. So I gotta sip my beverage slowly. So folks, the BAMPies. It's the end of 2023. It's actually technically we're in 2024 already, but we haven't seen any 2024 movies yet, to my knowledge. I think everything I have seen so far are still technically dated as 2023 or something else. An interesting thing about this year, I think before we get into our awards, we should talk about the year in general. In 2022, I saw my favorite movie, the movie that ended up winning Best Picture at the Oscars, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I saw that 4 times before we recorded the BAMPies last year. None of my movies hit that number this year. The most I saw a movie was 2 times, but there's like 8 movies that hit 2 times. Not all of those were movies I even liked. Some of them I saw at a screening, and my wife was like, "I want to see that," and I'm like,
"Gotcha,
fine, I will go watch it a second time." I was very grateful she did not want to see Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, because I don't know if I could make it through a second viewing of that.
Spoilers for your Best Picture, John.
I shouldn't be giving things away, but this year, there were some big movies that got knocked out of the running for the year. Like Dune 2 was supposed to come out, we didn't get to see it because they pushed it back because of the strike. But overall, I think there were some really great movies in 2023. Like there's some incredible movies that I think we might come back to in a few years and just like, wow, how great was this? But last year, when I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, the very first time, I was like, this is my movie. This is something special. It immediately jumped into my like top 50, and it ended itself after seeing it 4 times in my top 5 all time. I love that movie, and I hope it stays there. I hope it doesn't like dwindle with time, or if my taste changed dramatically and I don't like the silliness that's in that movie. I don't think so, but I'm always afraid of that. But I didn't have that with anything this year. There wasn't a movie where I immediately was like, this is my favorite. Like, and again, I don't know if that needs to happen every year, but like it does make it narrowing down what are you going to put at number 1 way harder if you didn't have that kind of aha moment, or like this movie talks to me, this movie hits me in a way that I can't discount. Like I don't have that this year. And again, there's incredible movies. I think there's some great films. There's movies that I've been recommending. There's some there's so many movies that I'm not even going to get to talk about today because it just didn't have a place in the awards. But I absolutely loved or felt, like, man, I really hope I get to rewatch this. And that's something I want to try to do more of going forward. Is I used to rewatch movies too much. Like there are some films from my childhood that I've seen 100 times, and then there are movies if a movie's come out in the last like 5 years, 6 years, I've probably only seen it once, unless the very few exceptions where I've like Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's a few other movies that I've gone back to a couple of times, but like I have not hit any double digits with any movies in the last 6 or 7 years, even though there are films that I love. Unless I taught them. There might be 1 or 2 that I've taught, and thus I showed multiple times in class. Like La La Land, I might have double digits at this point because I've taught La La Land several times. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing. I don't know how you felt about the year, Matt, but that was kind of my take of 2023. Like incredible films, but I don't think I have a favorite coming out of 2023 that's like going to be up there in my top 50. At least I don't know for sure, obviously, but there's There's one, but I definitely need to rewatch it before I can even start to lock it in.
I think I do. I think I have one of those films. Maybe not to the level that you did with Everything Everywhere, but there are a few films this year which I think are outstanding. And like you said, like any good award show, big or small, obviously we're the biggest. Um, there's always going to be some that don't make the cut just because there are the amount of volume of films that are coming out is part of the reason
Yeah,
why I am similar to you, where I don't really double digit films anymore. I very rarely double watch films anymore because
yeah,
most times of a weekend there's at least two films coming out, or you've got Netflix or whatever streaming series is dropping a film. So you kind of feel, and as we write, we are film journalists, we're film critics, we like to write about film. There's always that kind of desire to watch them, but also we want to keep our content going. And also, to another extent, we do an end of year award show. We want to make sure we're doing the most definitive list that we can do, even if we've
yeah.
only seen the films once. So there's a few films on
Oh,
this list which I've seen twice. Not many, but like you, there's none which I've seen where I thought, well, no, let me rephrase that. There's none that I've seen where I went out and watched more than twice. There's a couple where I would have liked to have seen more than that because they resonated with me enough. But time constraints and just I needed to get myself ready for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. That was the big one of the year, so I didn't want to. I didn't want to shoot my load too soon, but I think as a year in film though, it was. I think it was a very good year. I think it's obviously been spiked by the Barbenheimer phenomenon halfway through the year. It's kind of a bit before that and after that. And we've had big superhero films. We've had great dramas. A24 been bringing it as usual. We've had a lot. We've had some rom coms coming out. Every genre has been
hmm.
represented for better or worse. Is it the best film going year I've ever had? Possibly not. But that doesn't mean, like you
I
said, that
mean,
there aren't a few gems in there.
we've had some major movies from big filmmakers this year too. Like a lot of big filmmakers
Oh,
dropped
man,
their new movie, which is a big deal. And then I think to your point, you mentioned our goal is always to see as many movies of the year, so that when we do lists like this, or when we pick our favorite of something, that we have the most comprehensive list possible. We don't
yeah,
have big gaps from the year. Like we're not sitting here going, best movie, but I didn't see Killers of the Flower Moon, or I didn't see Barbie. Like we
yep.
want to make sure we get all those. I have seen from released in 2023. I've seen over 200 movies this year. I won't hit that in 2024, as I've mentioned on the podcast. I'm starting my doctorate program, so my film viewing will be scaled back to our episodes, and then whatever I'm reviewing for the sites, I might catch some other stuff, but I'm not. I'm trying to convince myself it's okay not to watch over 300 movies this year, because I pretty much 2016, I've watched at least 300 movies and I have not missed that. I've actually, the last 2 years, I've watched over 400 movies. It's not feasible this year, and it's hard to, like, in my head, it's like, well, you have to. And I'm like, you don't. You really don't. It's
No?
okay. And so but I've seen a good offering of what 2023 had to bring to the table, and it's still hard to narrow it down. If anything, it's even harder to narrow it down, because I'm like, there are
It's
movies that I
tougher.
think were really good at the time that I don't. They don't instantly click back in my mind, and then I'm like, I've made my list, and I'm like, oh wait, what about
What
that
about
movie?
this
I'm
one?
trying to, like,
I had that a
fit that
few
in.
times. I think I've seen 170 this year, which is about
That's still
20 or
pretty good.
30 more than last year because I went top heavy at the beginning of the year. I'm like, nope, I'm going to watch a lot. So I kind of almost train myself to carry that on for the rest of the year. And there are peaks and troughs. Life gets in the way or finds a way to stop you watching
Hmm.
a film sometimes, and you then have to play catch up. But so you've got 200 plus. I've got 170 odd. That's not a bad showing for the year. I think we've covered as much as we can do. But like you said, the more you watch, the harder it is sometimes to narrow it down because, the law of averages, you watch that many films, there's going to be a fair few which you do enjoy, let alone ones which maybe you find a bit more disappointing.
Indeed. So, folks, strap in, because this is one of our few bloody awesome podcast episodes that we do a video and in person. Not in person. We're never in person.
One day.
On audio. Wow. But uh, we're going to get through our categories. We're going to list our movies. And the way it works for the main categories is we're going to tell you two runner-ups and then our winner for that category. Matt and I do not know each other as winners. We might have overlap. We may not. Um, I'm sure there will be some overlap, probably. And again, some of these could change if we rewatch something, or like maybe we
Of
miss.
course.
I don't feel like I've missed any major movies from 2023. Like I can't think of anything that's like in the award contention. I actively went and like I was looking for like what documentaries are listed. Even though my documentary list is not going to match what's the Oscars nominated, because I went very personal with my
Mm,
picks for documentary this year.
yeah.
Um, and but I've seen like all the big documentaries that are in discussion. I've seen all of the big international films, some that were not even eligible to be because the country didn't vote it in. But I've seen
Yeah, yeah.
most of those. So like I did my homework for the awards, partly because of the Critics Association. I mean, I wanted to make sure I was voting. I didn't want to throw away a vote. There's nothing worse than like knowing, like if I saw this documentary but no one else has seen this documentary,
Yeah, I know what you
why
mean, yeah.
vote for it in that scenario? But here, this is just me. This is just what I vote. Like,
This is
and
what it's
I
all
love
about.
that part of it. These are like my personal preferences. I'm not worried about like, oh, well, this, I don't want to be the white noise vote. These are
Mhm.
like, no, this is a movie I think is worth mentioning on the podcast that maybe we didn't mention beforehand, and maybe people didn't see. So, with that, Matt, what's our first category?
Well, we've been waiting since, funnily enough, January 2022 to do this all over again. We're back again, 2023. Sorry, we're back again in 2024. The first category is, it's a good looking one, Best Cinematography. Now, John, don't keep us waiting anymore. What are your two runner ups and your winner for Best
So,
Cinematography?
um, my runner-up number. Runner up one or two. I don't runner up number two. I don't know how to. This part always confuses me, but is Eric Messerschmidt for The Killer, because uh,
Ooh,
David Fincher's film, all of his films, to be honest, look incredible. But I really like the cinematography in The Killer. There are some really cool shots. The lighting, just that opening sequence when he's waiting for his first hit. It's in this dark room, and the way the lighting is, I love so much of that stuff. So it was easy. It's a film I wanted to rewatch, and I meant to get to it a couple of times because I don't think that movie's getting enough love. I really, really loved The Killer when I saw it, and I am a big fan of David Fincher in general, but I really enjoyed the cinematography in that film. Um, number Runner up number one. I'm going in reverse order here, so I guess like that was two. This is one.
I
Um,
guess.
is Killers of the Flower Moon and Ludwig Göransson. Is that right? Nope, that's wrong. It's Rodrigo Pietro. I'm
Yep, that's the
probably
one.
saying that incorrectly. Um, uh, Killers of the Flower Moon is, I mean, it's a western, right? Like, so you're gonna have this really great wide cinematography. The look of that film is incredible. Just, I mean, we could get into like production design, but obviously we're
Yeah.
talking cinematography here. But I think it looks fantastic, and it's hard to not discuss. And Scorsese, as a director, I tend to like the way his movies look. There's no different with Killers of the Flower Moon. But my winner is for Hoyt Van. Oh, I definitely typed this last name wrong. Hoyt Oppenheimer.
Hoyt van
Um,
Hoytema.
I mean, one, Nolan's movies are always for me. I am admittedly a Nolan fanboy, and if you know anything about his movies, he has revolutionized IMAX cameras to make his films, and his cinematographer has to be the master of those things. So it's undeniable when you watch that film, when you the look of it. I mean, the unique close-ups, like when we're looking at Cillian Murphy's face in just in this wide shot, but here is his center face. It just looks incredible all throughout the film. I was so just always looking at the frame, what's going on. I don't know. I don't believe they shot in black and white, if I remember correctly. I can't recall if that's right or wrong. I know it's in black and white. I just can't remember if they were using black and white film stock, especially the IMAX stuff, because I don't know if that exists. And
I
if it
don't think that
doesn't
exists, yeah.
beforehand, it does now, and that would be another Nolan thing. So either way, I just think that movie is undeniably gorgeous, and the camera work in it is one of the highlights. As much as I have a lot of positives to say about Oppenheimer, but that's my pick for cinematography is Hoyt.
Hoyt for Oppenheimer. Well, my three JB are so runner
Yes,
up
sir.
number two, or the first runner up, is a bit of a left field one, but it's a film I saw at Tribeca. It's a film called Smoking Tigers. Hei Jin Jun is the cinematographer. I just think
I see that one.
the craft and the vision that she employs to create and the composition to turn what would otherwise be a standard shot of somebody standing outside a building or somebody walking through an old house or whatever. The composition of shot is done so well, and it's so interestingly shot, whether it's reverse shots, whether it's flip shot, mirror shot. Really, really impressive cinematography. And the reason it's in this list was because, frankly, I didn't expect it. I thought I was going to be watching a pretty good coming of age drama, and I'm getting smacked in the face with all these fantastic shots throughout. So that's why it stayed with me. And if a film can do that, then it's always going to be on one of my lists.
100%.
Next runner up, John. You said it. Hoyt van Hoytema for Oppenheimer, for all the reasons you said.
Runner up.
Runner up, all the reasons you said. I'm sure if this film comes up again later, this phrase will be used again. But what can you say about Oppenheimer that nobody else has said? It's a marvel in so many ways, and it looks incredible. And what Nolan's done for IMAX and for filmmaking cannot be understated. And Hoyt van Hoytema is a massive part of why Oppenheimer achieves the scale it does. But it didn't win for me because somebody else came in and also revolutionised the way certain films are shot. And that guy is Rodrigo Prieto for Killers of the Flower Moon. I think this film is delightful, such a delicious looking film. And I was looking up about it, and when the film came out, they were saying, back in the 1920s, when the film is set, these certain lenses of camera didn't exist. So they wanted to make it feel period accurate. So Panavision put optics from the 1950s inside a lens just so it wouldn't look so modern. And of course it's shot on film, so you've got that delicious depth of field and colour as well. But I just think he captured the huge scale of the project. And you mentioned it's a landscape. It's a Western, so you've got to have those sweeping, grandiose landscapes. Yeah. And cinematography, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it isn't just, wow, that looks good, I can put it on the wall. It's, what is it evoking? What is it telling you? And I think the cinematography really captures the emotion of what Scorsese himself and the rest of the gang are putting through. It's lit really well, and the camera placements and the framing throughout are just really good, whether it's kinetic or static. It tells a story, especially with the Osage culture, and that's what I wanted. And Killers of the Flower Moon, I gave my thoughts on that film in our review, but goddamn if it isn't the best looking film I've seen all year, John.
Well, so it's fun that we flipped on that, but that both movies are on both of our lists. I don't think I saw the one from Tribeca, which is surprising on my part. I don't know what I missed. I'm a little sad now. It is definitely possible. There was a movie, I don't even remember what it's called right now, but we were at a screening and Sean was telling someone, this movie, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, mm-hmm. And he's like, you saw it? I'm like, I did? And he's like, yeah, probably. You saw it at Sundance. I'm like, okay,
you've seen
sure. And I looked at my letterbox. I'm like, oh yeah, it was early in the year. It wasn't a favorite, so I mean, no offense to it. It wasn't a bad movie. It just was, way past. It didn't do enough to stay fresh. So this is possible. Our next category is best score. This is obviously something for me. I always struggle with like isolating the score because it's a lot of times for me the experience is watching it is holistic. The score is bringing you into the film. It's a part of the scene, and I don't always notice it. So I always have to really like make an effort if the music is working for me to like, oh wait, acknowledge it, pay attention to it. So Matt, tell us what's your runner-ups and then the winner for best score for you.
So in the podium position, the first one is Howard Shore's score for The Pale Blue Eye, which is a Netflix film starring Christian Bale and Harry Melling. A lot of people said it was not great. I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't. It didn't crack my top 50. It actually, to be fair, may have done of the year. I thought it was a pretty solid kind of period whodunit mystery piece. But the score was so well done. Again, it's of its time. It really captured or evoked what the spirit of that time. It's about Edgar Allan Poe, and also it's got. I can't explain it, but the murder mystery whodunit kind of flares to it. I'm thinking kind of what Nathan Johnson did for the Knives Out films. It's not quite as flamboyant as that, but they're in there. It's got some genre flicks to it. So Howard Shore for The Pale Blue Eye is my first runner-up. Next up, you've already mentioned him mistakenly, but I'm going to say it for you, is Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer. Oops. Man. Well, Ludwig, obviously, Oscar winner for Black Panther. and he has revolutionized the sound of Star Wars with the Mandalorian and that. So, and his work with Donald Glover is, really singled him out to be one of the leading lights in modern music. But then having Nolan work with him as well. I know he did work with him on Tenet, but here on Oppenheimer, like that film, everything's just stepped up a notch, and the score is incredible. I love how Ludwig can utilize so many different instruments and styles and genres in one sitting, but still make it feel connected. And Oppenheimer, when it needs to be big and it goes emotional. And I really, really, really happy to hear that from Ludwig. It didn't make number one though, because a more recent one is my best score of the year, John. Purely for the emotion of it, it was Joe Hisaishi for The Boy and the Heron. I mentioned that on our review. The music in this is stunning. I love Joe Hisaishi anyway. He's worked on every Hayao Miyazaki film since '84. It's you got Spielberg, Williams, Nolan, Zimmer, Hitchcock, Herman, Hisaishi, Miyazaki, and the music. He said it himself. I read an interview with him where he said the music. He enjoyed the film because he didn't run a search for meaning. He just felt the film. That's how he wrote the music. He just had a feeling when he watched it, and that's where the music came from. And Hisaishi is a world class pianist anyway, and the score is piano led. There's big string sections throughout. There's electronics and percussion as well, but it really captures the emotion without ever taking over. Some of his other scores, which I love, are quite like Spirited Away, big sweeping scores at times. Like this one kind of steps back a bit more and lets Miyazaki's very personal story take the forefront, and this is just there holding its hand, guiding it. But listening to some of the tunes at the cinema whilst was watching it, but also recently on Spotify, man, I just get sucked back into the world again, and I think it's such an emotive and evocative score. Very minimalist, but people may say recency bias as well, but no, this I love this score, and it's if it's the final one he does, or for Miyazaki, then it ain't a bad one to go out on. So my best score of the year is The Boy and the Heron by Joe Hisaishi. John, what say you?
So my first runner-up, is I'm going back to the David Fincher well and he went back to his well, Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor and The Killer. I've been a big fan of their scores. To be fair, they're because of Trent Reznor. If you don't know this about me, I was a rock musician for a long time. So like the Trent Reznor of it all, when he became a score guy, I was very aware of it because it was like, what? Like he's the Nine Inch Nails guy. Why is he doing movie scores? And then The Social Network won me over. And so I'm always kind of a sucker for their scores. They do a lot more than I even realized, like because they don't just work with Fincher, but that's when their
Yeah,
scores feel familiar to me is when they're with Fincher, and that was the case with The Killer. My
Oscar
number
winners as
two,
well.
Oscar winners as well. I think for The Social Network, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, I also have, as I kind of already ruined it, I guess, but I have for number two or runner up, whatever, is Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson. That score. I like Nolan scores in general, though. Like I love, like again, most of them beforehand were Zimmer, but here I was just like, yes, that Nolan score really hits, and there's just key moments where it drops out, and there are key moments where it really brings the emotion that you're looking for. And so that we have in common. And in fact, for the score, our winner is the same as well. I also have Joe. I'm going to mess up his name, Hishashi, for Boy and the Heron.
No
I
way.
also don't think it's recency biased. It was one of the rare times when I'm watching a movie where I was aware of the score, but not in a bad way. It wasn't pushing me out of the movie. I was just aware of how it was affecting my being sucked into the world of the film. That's a movie that I really want to rewatch, and it's not playing locally anywhere near me, and I'm really disappointed. I can't wait to own that one to add it to my Howard Miyazaki collection because I do want to rewatch it. I think all of his movies benefit rewatches. Howl's Moving Castle to me is one of the best examples of it. The first time I saw it, I liked it. I have grown to love that film so
Yeah.
much with rewatches. And Spirited Away is the same, although I've taught Spirited Away several times, so I'm like intricately aware of that film. But Boy and the Heron, I think, is worthy of it. And I've listened to several podcasts about it, and it only made me appreciate the film more. And that score, though, I think was a big part of my enjoyment of the film to get from the get go. So, when we were making these lists, that was immediate. I'm like, wow, that was the one time this year where I was super aware of a score while watching a
Man.
movie, and not in a bad way. Because there have been some movies where the score, the one I always go to is It Follows. I was so aware of that score. People love that score. But for me, it was just like, it's so in my head. Like, please pull the score back a little bit. I felt that was like took me out of the movie, where this did the opposite. It brought me into the world of the film, which is so important because that's what the film is all about.
A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Genuinely didn't expect that, because I remember you saying on the episode that you liked the score. I remember you saying you really liked the score. Man, I didn't think
How
it'd be
often do
your
I
number
ever
one.
mention that?
Yep.
I rarely mention the score in a review. So like the fact that I brought it up immediately says like, oh, that's got to be
That
at the end of the year.
should have been a giveaway. And for you to say that it was one of the first ones on the team sheet, that's a big deal. So yeah, The Boy and the Heron takes it for both of us. Joe Hisaishi, best score for the both of us. So now let's move on to our next category, which needs a bit of definition. It's called Most Feel Bad. So these are the films which they're not, well, they may be, but we're not classing them as the worst films or bad films to come out of this year. They are films of which we saw, we experienced, and we felt a heaviness weighing down on us. We felt our soul feel sad, or maybe a negative emotion towards it, but not because the film itself was bad. So it's films which elicited a negative emotion from us, and it's always an interesting
Yeah,
one to go in with, isn't it, JB?
and all three of these movies for me, I liked, but they made me feel
Yeah.
awful in some way, shape, or
Ooh.
form, and that's why they're on my list. So my first runner-up is Ari Aster's third film, Beau is Afraid, a movie that is designed to make you feel bad. I think it is pushing to win. It's almost like he heard BAMPies last year and was like, "Oh, I got you." And while he's not my winner, uh, I mean, Beau is Afraid is designed, literally designed to make you feel anxious and worried and concerned and like you want to rip your own skin off kind of feeling. And it succeeded again. I like that movie. A lot of people didn't like it. I thought all of it was weird and quirky, but in enjoyable ways. But again, in like unpleasant ways where you don't feel good while you're watching it or at the end. You're probably not going to be satisfied with the conclusion, even not to say there isn't one, but it's going to make you feel bad. And so easy to put on this list. Plus, I wanted to mention it because that movie definitely got slept on. I think compared to Hereditary and Midsummer, Beau is Afraid did not get the horror crowd to back it like it did with
It's
those other
true.
two. So I wanted to mention it. I think it's a good movie. I think Astor's 3 for 3. I don't think he's making movies for audiences. I think he's making movies that deal with his personal problems, and he's working through some demons apparently.
Just a few.
Specifically with Beau is Afraid. My number two or runner up to I still don't know how to say this. Is a movie we've mentioned already a couple of times, Killers of the Flower Moon. Um, again, excellent movie. Think it's brilliant, but man, did it make me multiple times in the movie. It made me upset. To realize it was based on a true story was devastating. To be 41 years old when I see this movie and go, I've never heard of these Native American, these indigenous people, and they're. I mean, I don't even know how to say it without it being spoilers. So, but the fact that I grew up in an American education system as a teacher and had never encountered this story beforehand made me feel bad like that. It made me feel, my part in the burden of it, that I'm not knowing the story is disowning American history and the horrible parts of it. And uh, it reminded me very much of HBO's The Watchmen series a few years ago when I learned about Black Tulsa for the first time and had never heard that story until a comic book TV series introduced me to it. This was the same thing. Like it took a Martin Scorsese film to make me aware of something that I should have known. So impossible not to feel bad in that way. But again, not saying it's a bad movie, folks. Just making sure that the definition here is very, very clear. These made me feel emotionally bad. And then the movie that twice destroyed me because there's no way these scenes should exist, but they do. Is When Evil Lurks. Um,
Damn.
when Evil Lurks is a horror film. It's on Shudder. I forget the director's name, but he's also did Frighteners, which I watched for something on Shudder during Halloween, or
Damien
it was
Rugner.
maybe we had that. It was on the bracket, I think. His other
Terrified.
movie, Terrified. That's what it's called. Um, this movie, I won't say what the scenes are, but there was a scene where I'm like, there's no way they're going to show that, and then they showed it, and I was just like, oh my god. And then after I was acknowledging how horrible that they filmed this, that they put this to film, I found the marketing materials, which made it all the worse because I was like, they used that as a marketing image. So, um, it's a movie that I think is really good. I think it's a really well made horror film. It's troubling, but it also, wow, did it succeed at making me feel terrible? Like that movie ended, and you just are like, well, humans are awful. We are terrible, and I hate us.
Yeah,
And yeah, I don't think I felt worse at the end of a movie than that one. So it was easy to put that as the winner of most feel bad.
yeah, damn. I,
What
I,
about
I
you,
feel
Matt?
that, my friend. Mine are, well, for the feel bad category. I don't want to feel bad for too much longer, so I'll get right into it. First runner up, JB, The Iron Claw was my first feel bad movie, and it's more feel bad because it's based on true events. And if you're not aware of it, I won't give those away. But I saw this recently, and the final moments with Zac Efron's Kevin Von Erich and his words about brotherhood are so sad and so tragic.
Mhm.
Great film, though. Great film. Like you, JB, the three films on my list I think are great films, but not even the best of them can affect you in a way that makes you just feel heavy. And The Iron Claw was one of them. Great film though. Second one, JB, Birth slash Rebirth was the second film,
Yeah,
second runner up,
heck
and
yeah.
it's yeah, I remember you seeing this one. I think this one you saw first, and you mentioned it. I think you saw this first at the festival, a festival, and recommended it. And it's kind of very loosely based on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And the director, it's Laura Moss is the director. It's her first feature, and it posits the duality of life and creation with motherhood in such a way that hasn't been done before. Because had it done, I don't think it would have been as effective as this is a real chilling and complex, dramatic horror film. But the final shot is one for the ages as well. It's a tough watch. But the film that made me
Um,
feel most bad, John,
yes,
is Demian Rugner's When Evil Lurks.
dude, back to back. That's wild.
Back to back, man. It's just a heavy, hopeless film. It's cruel, shocking, unrelenting, but it's also bloody good and bloody effective, which is what it sets out to do. And Terrified was good, Ragnar's previous film.
Yeah, that one's
This
more
is
fun.
better.
Like,
That is more
get
fun,
better.
even though it's it's still scary. Like Terrified is still
It is, and there's some
affecting.
troubling stuff in that movie. Yeah,
Yeah, and then he looked at that and thought, yeah. You say Ari Aster
I
heard
got you.
BAMPies last year. I think Regner was like, yeah, I hold my beer and everything else because some of the imagery throughout is nightmare inducing or genuinely upsetting. But the movie never felt like it was just trying to shock you. It never felt like it was just a series of
Yeah,
vignettes, which I really appreciated. But so, how I think, sorry, the movie's great, but don't expect to have a spring in your step when you finish. John watched this film and he sent me a text saying, before you watch it, there's a scene in it which I don't think you're going to get through, essentially. And I know as soon as
yeah,
it's coming, I thought, you are kidding me. Like you, it's like then they won't, and then they did multiple times, and yeah, really heavy stuff. But it isn't there just to purposely shock you or go over its way to feel gimmicky. It's all in service of the story, and yeah, the way it ends, I'm like, man, I give up. I give up. Give me something with sparkles because this is too heavy.
yeah, yeah. You're like, I almost. I think I watched an animated movie as soon as it ended. I was like, I need something really light. It did not leave you feeling good. That is for
No,
sure.
no.
But our next category hopefully did. That's our most feel good movies. So again, these aren't necessarily the best movies, but these are the movies that it felt like you had bubble tea or something, and you're just like,
Ooh.
ah, I feel light and fresh and ready to go outside and fly. And that's what we're hoping for here. So these are our most feel good movies. Matt, tell me, what's your runner up?
Runner up number one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Finally, John, a good Turtles movie for me, and one that captured the spirit of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love the animation, I love the needle drops, and I love the voice acting. Plus, my kid enjoyed it too. I saw this film twice. I went to see it once for the podcast, bloody awesome movie podcast, and then I took my kid to see it. She's 7, and she's not she knows what turtles are, but she's never really watched them. And I'm sitting here with a mug, and I've got all the original figures and toys over there. So for her, this is all new. But she had a great time. She found it funny. I did as well. I laughed so many times during it. It didn't feel like it was just looking at across the Spider Verse or into the Spider Verse and stealing its homework. It felt like it was not tipping its cap to it and doing its own thing. I felt good at the end of Mutant Mayhem, John. My next runner-up is Rye Lane, which I thought was a
Oh,
super
good one.
charming urban British rom-com that was as predictable as they come. But when the formula works, like you all know better than anyone as a rom-com fan. When the formula works,
Yeah,
it works, and it really did here for me. I think David Johnson and Vivian Oprah's chemistry was excellent, and I was rooting for them the whole time. And it's 1 hour 22 minutes long. Excellent, very short, very funny comedy, which worked for me. Made me feel good by the very end. I was cheering and smiling internally because I'm British. So my number one feel good film of the year, my counter to When Evil Lurks, John, is Barbie, Greta Gerwig's
oh,
Barbie. For
yeah,
me, I'm
yeah,
like, how
totally.
could it not be? Barbie's full of life, colour, sparkle, pizzazz, and all the other superlatives that sound similar. And yeah, it's got its existential narrative, but it's full of great, timely, and necessary messages for now. The songs are upbeat, it's catchy, the production design is eye catching, it's fun, the performances are all in. It's a disco of a movie, and it's almost impossible to not get swept up in the fun that is Greta Gerwig's Barbie. So yeah, Barbie, I came out just feeling happy, man. I was Ken-uff when I came out of it. I had plenty of Kennedy coming out of Barbie, man. So yes, Barbie
For
is my
sure.
most feel good film of the year. But John, what
I
made
like it.
you feel good this year?
So my runner-up one is I think I've done more for the director's career than Glenn Hansing, and that is John Carney's Flora and Son. I have taught once, and I've taught Sing Street, and I have yelled from the
Ooh.
mountaintop of how great his movies are at capturing the musician in them. And while Flora and Son I think is flawed in a lot of ways, I could not help but fall for his formulas. I am a sucker for his style of filmmaking. Even though I don't think these songs are nearly as memorable as what he did in Sing Street or what he did in Once, which
Mhm.
I mean, Once is for me the music of Once is a masterpiece. Sing Street feels like a great medley of '80s music. The Flora and Son, there's some music I don't like, but the songs that do work really well. And a lot of people really hated JGL in that film, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I'm a JGL guy, man. I just like him. I there's
How can you hate
there's a
him?
sincerity. Okay, well, I think some people see him like as a tryhard, um, but I feel like he makes what he likes, and I think he loves movies and acting, and I just appreciate that as a fan of those things too. And I liked him in this. I love the sequence where they sing the duet, and he is on the computer. They're zooming, but Carney decides to bring them into the same space virtually, like because that's how they feel, even though that's not the reality. It's like when Matt and I record, we're in the same space, even though we're an ocean apart, and
John's right in front of my face.
and it made me feel good. And that's what Carney's films collectively have always done for me. Is even they don't always end how you want them to end, but they always end on an upbeat kind of hopeful vibe for me. And the movies make me feel good, and this movie succeeded. It's why I like it more so than what's there. It's the feeling that it brought out in me that I really loved. um my next runner up is a animated film from Netflix, Nimona. Nimona stars Chloe Grace Moretz and Riz Ahmed, two people that especially Riz Ahmed. He's become one of my favorite actors. He is the main reason why I was drawn to Nimona when I saw his name was on it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in. I like the animation style. The story is incredible. It's so positive. There's so much hopefulness. It's funny. It's kinetic. I mean, it moves. And then, as if I wasn't already won over, I cried multiple times, but like positive, like excited, like I'm so happy, I'm so hopeful tears. But the movie ends, and I hear a song come on that I've never heard, but I'm like, that sounds
Yep.
like my favorite artist, K-Flay. And I'm like, is that K-Flay? And sure enough, K-Flay does the credit song, and it's possible. It's unlikely because it's a big pool, but it's eligible for an Oscar for Best Original Song. I'm like, how cool would it be? Maybe people finally would know the genius that is K-Flay, and that just cemented it because like I was already feeling good, and then I got a new song from my favorite artist
Win.
as a surprise, and I was like, this is incredible. And yeah, it was a total win. So I walked away from that film wanting everyone to see it. I got to see it like a week early because I reviewed it and was just so hyped to tell people about it. And I bought the graphic novel because I enjoyed it. I still haven't read all of the graphic novel. It's different, so it's not pulling me in the same way. But I think the voice performances are incredible. The animation style is
Yeah,
really cool, and it just made me feel real good. And my winner, though, the most feel good movie for me was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. Um, because I grew up obsessed with the Ninja Turtles, and not only myself, but one of my best friends, editor of Berk Reviews, David, is also a big
nice.
Turtle fan, and we got to see this together, and we were fanboying like crazy, sitting next to each other at the critic screening. We were both so hyped, and when we walked
Yeah,
out, we were just like, they nailed it. They not only is it something new, it doesn't just feel like a rehash of the thing we had, but it feels like a logical evolution. The way they choose to tell the story, it's so much fun. And for all of the comic book movies that have attempted to have too many villains, this one does. There are too many villains and they make it work. And it shouldn't, but it does. And there's so many moments where you just can't help but you're laughing, you're having a great time with it. Jackie Chan is Splinter. I mean, like you can't go wrong with this movie. And it was again, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like we knew it was coming. We knew it was a big cast, obviously huge, like so many big names in this film. But having four teenagers voice the
crucial.
turtles was an act of genius because their chemistry and the joy they bring to the characters just came off the screen. I walked out like I had been covered in ooze and was a mutant myself, and I have not forgotten that film. I have the steelbook sitting in my Amazon shopping cart, and I'm just like, I don't need to spend $35, but I really, really want
Yes, you
this
do.
steelbook. So, uh, yeah, most feel good movie, man. If you guys slept on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, for whatever reason, it's on Paramount Plus, I think, right now. Watch it. It's so good, and you will feel good while you watch, especially if you were a fan as a kid.
Yes, and of which we again have the mug right here. I'm
Yep.
feeling 80s today. Ghostbusters jumper, Turtles
I have
mug, and
right here is a
yeah.
Raphael slash Michelangelo mask. You can choose which one
Oh,
you want. From
that's very cool.
unfortunately, it came with one of the Michael Bay Blu-rays, but
It's
Michael
fine.
Bay
You can
produced.
squint.
All
You
right,
can squint and say it's
so
one of
we're
the old ones.
going.
I've got the Last Ronin down there as well. So
As a kid, I used to have the ones that had the little plastic nose, and it came with the
yes,
the stuff. I had
I
like
remember.
at least two or three of them.
I remember
All
those, my
right,
friend.
we're going
Um,
from most feel good to what? What are we doing, Matt?
we are going now to most disappointing. So on the BAMP here, listen, we'll critique a film until the cows go home. We'll say if a film is terrible, if that's what we believe. But we're not here to spread negativity or necessarily say, we don't want to sit here and celebrate the worst of things per se. So instead, we present most disappointing, the three films that we were most disappointed by. Maybe we had high hopes for them. Maybe it's a director we love. Maybe uh, we were sucked in by the trailer. Maybe we've been waiting to see this for years and it just didn't hit like we thought it was going to hit. So, John, I must know. I don't like seeing you disappointed, but I do want to know what are the three most disappointing films of the year for you?
So this list is real disappointing because I think all three of these movies I had reason to have high expectations for. You're like, hey, what if we give you space travel, dinosaurs, and Adam Driver? And you're like, oh, give it to me. I'm all in. Like,
Yep.
let's see it. And then you get there, and it's a movie called 65, and you're like, what garbage? What have you done? How can you
Yep.
make this bad? You have dinosaurs, and it's like, you know what this scene needs? Bug in mouth. It's like, why? Why is there a
Yeah.
bug in mouth? There are dinosaurs. Like, such a missed opportunity for such an easy premise. And I will say, I don't think Adam Driver's bad in it. I just think the movie is so bad that it can't he can't save it. And it's some of it is visuals. The visual effects are not good in the movie. And
Yep.
man, dinosaurs, like, and the things that it tries to do that are quote unquote clever are not clever. And it just left me feeling really, really disappointed, like I wasted a lot of time. My second runner up, you're like, hey, new Robert Rodriguez movie with Ben Affleck, and you're like,
Ah.
give it to me, please. Like, what is it? And you're like, it's called Hypnotic. And like, ooh, that sounds interesting. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not interesting. It is. It is one of the worst things I saw this year, and
Damn.
I want to always back Robert Rodriguez because I think he does some really cool stuff. But man, this one really missed the mark, and it was a mystery movie too when I saw it, and I was like, "Can I have my free ticket back?" Like I don't know, you know, I feel like I wasted 2 hours. And I don't even remember who there were some other people in it. I don't remember at this point because it's been blocked from my brain. Um, Man, that movie's bad. Uh, the biggest one though, and this one I think there's a lot of people share my feelings on this one. Is I actually am not gonna remember the director's name, but good director, John David Washington. Sci-fi futuristic war movie with robots. The creator,
Oh,
um,
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards, and you're like, oh yeah, Rogue One, like this will be
Oh,
fantastic. A- and it's not. It's not. Now, to be fair, it's not like 65 and Hypnotic where I think they're bad movies. I don't think the creator is bad, but it's the one where I think it had the most potential to be a masterpiece or to be this experience of cinema that you can't forget, and it does not live up to that for me. It does have some really cool visuals. I think the story misses a lot. I think there's some beats where you're just like, what is happening? Why is this even a thing? This doesn't make any sense. Why are there suicide bomber robots? Like it's weird stuff like that throughout the film that you're just kind of left pondering, scratching your head as to what the world is trying to do. There's a lot of Blade Runner in it, and it just did not amount to what it was trying to do. So I think like 65 was early in the year, so you kind of like, well, it's a February movie. That's probably not a good sign. Hypnotic got dumped like real
yeah.
auspiciously, and I think it had like a weird festival thing, so there was already weird buzz about it. So I went in a little apprehensive, but still hopeful because it's like, well, it's got a pedigree behind it. The creator, I think there was so much hype, and when it was dropping, and it was like it's this prestige blockbuster type time slot, and it missed the mark for me real hard. Matt, what disappointed you this year, my friend?
My friends, I'm going to kick off straight away and say my number 3 in terms of disappointment. My first runner up is 65. 65, man. Being able to make Adam Driver fighting dinosaurs so mind numbingly dull meant this film had to be on the list. And you said it came out in February and it still haunts me now. Almost a year later, I'm like, God damn, that was awful. It's disappointing. It's forgettable. It's boring. It's a boring film, and that's the worst part of it. And it's nonsensical, not in the time element of it, in the actual why Adam Driver's character does some of the things he does, or tells Ariana Greenblatt's character the things he does. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you the way you are? None of it makes sense. Yeah, like I say, bugs. There's dinosaurs. What do we do with Adam Driver fighting dinosaurs? Well, we just won't put many dinosaurs in because we haven't got a budget. Very, very disappointing film. The second most disappointing film for me, second runner up, is The Creator. All the reasons you said, John. I thought this film was going to be my number one of the year just from the trailers because
I
they
remember.
did their job. They looked insane, and it felt like a lot of unused concepts for Rogue One. A lot of the visuals and a lot of the concepts. I was like, yeah, this looks incredible, and I will say for the budget, it does look better than a lot of films that came out this year. It
Yeah,
looks stunning. But man, was it disappointing for the reasons you mentioned. Like the narratively, it misses the beat so hard. It tries to be something and it just can't. And then in those final acts, it just becomes a totally different film. It loses away, it loses its steam completely. And for what I thought was going to be, like you say, like this existential masterpiece or humanitarian masterpiece, it isn't, and it's a shame. It's not my worst film of the year, but it was a huge disappointment. But my most disappointing film of the year, though, JB, it's a film called Master Gardener, and it's directed by Paul Schrader. Now, Paul Schrader
makes
recently
sense.
released his top 10 best films of 2023, and Master Gardener was on it. So Paul Schrader is nothing if not modest, and he's. I love Paul Schrader because he always says what he feels. But for me, he's been on fire in recent years. First Reform was my top
Yeah,
movie from that year it came out. The Card Counter was in my top 3, I think, of the year it came out. So I was very excited for this in this kind of unofficial trilogy he's got going on. Joel Edgerton, Sigourney Weaver, slam dunk had to be. Just no, it just didn't work for me. It's not as incisive or cutting as those other two, and I don't really mean to compare it to those two, but this is, by all intents, again an unofficial trilogy of films based on the 3 leading characters and their struggles and what they're dealing with. They're connected in that sense, but the two leads, Edgerton and Weaver, are good in the film, but the writing isn't great. It doesn't help them out. The Bond wasn't as believable as the other character pairings, and it just drags. It's a bit more subdued. It's a decent film. It's a decent film, but given what
Yeah,
I'd expected and what came before, I'd hoped that this would be top five of the year for me. I expected it to be, because Schrader for me has become a very, very, very good director, and he delivers films that I like. Those kind of deep psychological studies with great performers and great actors. We get that here, but just didn't work for me, JB. So whilst I could look at the creator and think, maybe I had higher hopes because of what I'd seen in the trailers, I thought Master Gardener would be a lock for my top 10, if not top 5. But sadly, it wasn't, JB. So my most disappointed film of the year is Paul Schrader's Master Gardener.
and from that we go to the movies that we wanted to watch but just didn't get to. And these are our 2023 viewing regrets. These, again, movies we actually haven't seen that came out in 2023, which you would have to think, like, for most people, if you saw 200 movies from the year, there's no way you missed anything. But yes, even then we
Yes.
still missed some things. I mean, I think Matt's had two that I haven't seen. I did see Constant Gardener. I wasn't disappointed, I just didn't. My expectations were a little lower. I do like
Yeah.
First Reformed and Constant Gardener, but nowhere near as much as you. But I actually think I need to rewatch First Reform, but I think I like Constant Gardener. Not Constant Gardener. I'm sorry.
Card counter?
The card counter. That's a
Yeah.
yeah. I think I like that one a little more because I think on the surface it's more my cup of tea right away. And also, Oscar Isaac just always seems to work for me. Edgerton is up and down with me. But let's talk viewing regret, Matt. What are the three movies that you regret not seeing from 2023?
Well, the three films that I regret not seeing are solely because I live on an island called the United Kingdom. Now, they
Wow.
had releases in the UK, whether it's London Film Festival or a very, very small cinematic window before it's getting a wider release. So the first film which I regret not being able to see is The Zone of Interest. Jonathan Glazer,
Hmm.
he's mental, I'm sure. So
Big
I'm
one.
always wildly intrigued when he releases a feature, and what I know of it in terms of the little I know of the story, I need to see it because again, he's hit or miss. He does not work for everyone, but there's something about,
Yeah.
because he's so out there and he's such a risk taker, or he's so, I think, self confident, and he releases films once every half a decade, if not longer. It's always almost like an event when he releases a film. So I'm really annoyed I couldn't get to see The Zone of Interest. The next one is The Holdovers, the Christmas film, which is releasing in February, I believe, in the United Kingdom, or at least in a couple of weeks' time, which is
What is
wild. And
happening?
I've heard nothing but good
Yeah.
things, mainly from this guy, Jon Berk, and a lot of other people as well for the performance in this film. I've heard that they are across the board excellent, and I've just heard it's a very good film. It did get I think it's a festival release, and I didn't get to see it. All of these had some kind of minimal release, limited release in the UK, but the big one, which I didn't get to see, JB, because it just isn't out here yet. I know they had a screening recently I couldn't make. Poor Things. I really, really wanted
I
to
went
catch that.
The release slate for that is so weird, even here in the States. It's like I saw it almost 2 months ago, and it still
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
in wide release right now. So it's
It's
wild.
it's wild, and you look, we know it's gunning for Oscars. I know I've heard of the buzz about it, and it's Yorgos Lanthimos, so I expect something like Jonathan Glazer. I expect something memorable, for better or worse. I wasn't a big fan of The Favourite, but I've loved everything else he's done, and I know. But the buzz surrounding Emma Stone means I'm just regretful of not being able to see this in 2023. I'll see it in a week or maybe 2 weeks' time, and maybe I'll watch it and think, okay, you would have probably won this BAMPie, you probably would have won that one, but I haven't seen it, so it's a regret of mine. But Poor Things is the
See,
film I wish I caught, but I hadn't.
Matt has a good reason to not have seen his availability. Mine are I mostly could have watched, but I chose not to for one reason or another. Starting with Fingernails, it's a director I'm not familiar with, Christos Nico, but the cast, man, Jessie Buckley, who has been like immediate for
Yeah,
me every time she's in something. I'm like, oh yeah.
yeah.
Then you put Riz Ahmed is in this movie, and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't know he was in this. And then Jeremy Allen White, who's had a huge year, right? And Luke Wilson, who I like Luke Wilson. I tend to be on board with him. I just heard it was kind of dull, and it's like I think it's an Apple TV original film. And I didn't want to be disappointed, and I was cramming when I heard about this movie. I was cramming all of the other stuff in for the awards season, and I was like, this one's getting so much negative feedback. I don't want to jump into it because I didn't want to waste a potential vote movie. I could have watched
Yeah, yeah,
A Zone of Interest, which everyone's talking about, where no one's really talking about fingernails. This is a film I think I'm going to end up coming to because I want to be a Riz Ahmed completionist.
yeah. What a
I've
cast!
seen a lot of his stuff, and yeah, and I do. Everything I've seen with Jesse Buckley, I'm just like, Buckley's
Yeah,
a win. And similar with this one, I a lot of negativity around a good person. I am one of those people, and I'm not proud of it, but I like Zach Braff's movies. I'm a fan of most of his stuff. I'll willingly accept that there are some things that are like the the movie with Natalie Portman when she's a manic pixie dream girl that I can't think of what it's called right now. I like that movie. I totally understand that character is written badly. But and then he did one with Kate Hudson as with and Josh Gad. I can't remember the title of it. Something like it's as good as something good. Something I don't know. I like that one. I like the movie he did where he's not the lead in it, but with Joey King and Michael Caine, and like there's the old men are like robbing a bank or something. Like I enjoyed that movie. And this has Florence Pugh and Morgan Freeman, and I'm like, how
yeah.
can this be bad? But I've mostly heard bad things, and it didn't come near me. It's on Prime right now, and I've almost watched it like 3 times. But I'm just like, well, I really should watch this instead. I should watch this instead. But I mean, I'm such a Florence Pugh fan. Like, I just can't
Yeah.
imagine not at least finding some joy in this. So I regret not giving it a chance. Maybe I could have been one of the voices of positivity towards the film when everyone else seemed to really, really hate it. And then the last one everyone has that I've heard talk about this particular film is raving about it, but it's called Passages. Um, it is Ben Whishaw, and it is directed by Ira Sachs. Um, Ben Whishaw, Franz Rogowski. It sounds amazing. It did not come theatrically near me, but I believe it's on Mubi, Mubi. For
Yeah.
those who don't know Mubi, and I have access to that. It didn't feel like it was substantial enough to watch, and also my understanding is it's very graphic at times, and so where sometimes when I was watching movies, a graphic movie would not have played appropriately in that scenario. So I was like, well, I can't watch that right now, and then it just kept getting pushed to the back burner, pushed to the back burner. And it's one I really wish I'd taken the time to see because again, everything I've heard about it has been really positive, and I definitely want to check it out. Plan to at some point to see Passages.
I have heard of that one because obviously Ben Whishaw, very, very talented British actor, so it got a little bit of attention here. Haven't seen it either, Jay. I haven't actually seen any of the three that you mentioned, so I stand in regret with you, Jon Berk, on that one. But man, that first film, what a cast, fingernails. But they are the films we regret. Maybe we'll watch them sometime during the year, and maybe we'll regret actually watching them. But fingers crossed that we don't. But the next category, JB, is we've gone from regret now. Let's go to most surprising. What was the film that surprised us most in 2023 for any reason whatsoever? JB, what's your three films?
And that's the thing. I love this category to get to talk about movies that may not talk about elsewhere. Like maybe these aren't going to be in my top five or something like that. But I went into them with maybe low expectations, and they won
Mm-hmm.
me over. The first runner-up is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves,
Ooh, good
um,
shout.
because I did not expect it to be good. Right? Like, I mean, yeah, it has a cast, and you're like maybe, but like they've tried to do a D&D movie a few times, and it almost always doesn't
It's
work. And
dank, yeah.
this one found the I mean from that opening sequence where Chris Pine is trying to talk his way out of getting in trouble in court, and
The
he's like
bird.
going through like how they keep interrupting, and then the bird, he's like, well, maybe we should wait for so and so. It's I was on board from minute one. There's a Bradley Cooper cameo that is phenomenally funny. Hugh
Yeah,
Grant is deliciously in his villain phase
he's
of his
great.
career, and he is owning it. I mean, there's so much good, and I love Chris Pine, and I don't think he gets enough love, really. Like, I think when we see something, we often are like, oh, yeah, but I think he gets kind of pushed aside as maybe like the third or fourth Chris, and
Mhm.
maybe he should be number one. This movie, again, just so pleasantly surprised. I would love to say like I'm a big D&D head. I'm not. I love the idea of D&D. I've only played it a couple times. I'm currently playing Baldur's Gate 3, so I'm even more on a D&D like high right now. But this film, I just think is like boom, it hits so much, and I know enough about the lore that I thought it pays a lot of homage to that. But it's set on telling a really good story in a world that's D&D esque, and that's what I think made it work. Is like you have characters, you get their motivations, you understand what they're trying to do, and then they're not afraid to have fun with it, and I think that
Yeah.
so many people are just having a blast with the film. So Dungeons and Dragons really surprised me. I've already mentioned this movie once before, but I would be I did not, I lied, sorry, my brain is all over the place. I have taught the film Searching pretty much since it came out on DVD. I love that film, and I taught it last year, just before, like I think it was December or early January last year, late December, like 2022 or early January 2023. I'm teaching the film Searching. The class was blown away. They always are because it's like it sucks you in. You're like, oh, why?
Yeah.
It's weird that we're on a computer screen, and then
Very
the
good
mystery
film.
unfolds, and you're just like, what? And then suddenly I'm at a movie at my local theater, and there's a trailer for this movie called Missing. I'm like, wait a minute, it's from the people from Searching. I had no idea there was a spiritual sequel coming out to a movie that I just taught. So I was super excited. I went back to class. I'm like, hey guys, there's a new movie coming out. And I was sure because it's not the same director, it's from the same people, right? Like, so some of the people involved with Searching, but it's not the same director. Are they going to be able to repeat the magic? And I think they do. I think they really do. And I think there's some elements of Missing that are better than Searching. They do a good job of upending you if you have expectations because you've seen Searching. They twist it. It is in the same universe
Yeah.
as Searching. That is an actual plot point, but it's not a direct sequel. None of the characters are the same. It has some interesting commentary, and I think I'm going to forget the actress's name, Storm Reed.
Storm Reed.
Um, it's so good. She's been in some movies that have not landed, like A Wrinkle in Time, which I was a fan of, despite it
Ugh.
having flaws. But I think she is terrific in this, and this is the type of film where it is star needed because it is like this: it's them in front of a camera on a computer having to act their butts off, and
Yeah.
she crushes it. So Missing really, I was so pleasantly surprised, both that it existed because I had no idea it was coming out. It was like I'm like, what is this? Um, and then that it was good, won me over more. And then my winner, though, for most surprising, uh, is interesting one because the initial viewing it didn't surprise me that much. It was the days and weeks that came after that really surprised me. That I couldn't stop thinking about the film, and that is The Holdovers. Um,
Man.
I am not a huge Alexander Payne fan. I have become one, I think, with this movie. I like Election, but I have issues. One, it made me uncomfortable. For it's trying to.
Yeah.
There's elements of it that are uncomfortable. I also, a controversial opinion, I don't like Matthew Broderick in a lot of stuff, and he annoys the crap out of me in Election. So I don't love that movie, which is a
I
lot of
get
people's
that.
go-to. I, I've only seen Sideways once, but I did like it when I saw it.
Okay.
I think Downsizing's interesting, but I don't think all of it
Oof.
works. There's something else of his that I saw that I can't think of right now. I haven't seen About Schmidt, and I have not seen Nebraska, two of his
I
big
liked About
Oscar
Schmidt
plays.
when I saw it originally when it came
And
out.
I'm more compelled to watch it now because I saw The Holdovers and I liked The Holdovers when I saw it. I thought it was very good. And then days went by and I kept thinking about it. And days went by and I kept thinking about it. And then I rewatched it literally last night, and it went from a 4-star movie to a 5-star movie for me. I think it's an
Damn.
all timer. There's some parts in it that just crack me up. I think the kid whose name I don't remember is an up and coming star. This is his debut. He's fantastic, but Giamatti is crushing it. There's this as a teacher. He is not a teacher like me, mind you, because he seems to hate teaching, but he has insight into the importance of education that I also value the way he does. And there's a scene in a museum where he gives a speech about understanding the past is how we better understand the present, and that is something I didn't used to agree with and have really come to understand as I've gotten older. That the more I understand, like with movies, the more movies I've seen from the old days, the more I understand the context of today's films, and that stuff really resonated with me. And I've always said this, I'm a sucker for found family movies, and The Holdovers has
Yeah.
a huge element of found family that just works for me in every way. And the second viewing cemented it. It is just a masterpiece of a movie. And Alexander Payne is a filmmaker who maybe I need to go back to and revisit some of the other movies that I haven't seen. So that's my most surprising. Because again, that first viewing, I was like, this is good. Second viewing, I was like, this is a masterpiece. So like that
Damn.
the fact that it it stayed with me for so long. A lot of movies this year didn't do that. Like there's again, I mentioned one earlier that I saw and completely forgot that I saw. This was one that I saw, and despite watching tons of movies afterwards, I mean, so many movies. I was in that time where I'm cramming in all these award movies. I'm getting
Yeah.
all these screeners. The holdovers kept kind of rising to the top, and like they say, man, the cream rises. So um,
Did you pay $30 on VOD for it?
I didn't. It's on Peacock, so I
Ah,
didn't have to.
sweet.
Um, yeah,
Wish it
so
was
I was
here.
like, hey, thank you, Peacock. But
Yeah,
Matt,
wish it
what
was here.
surprised you this year?
Well, unsurprisingly, is some of the films haven't been released yet in the UK. Distributors sort your stuff out. But for me, JB, the three most surprising films of the year for me. Now, the first one isn't. It is a huge film. Is Barbie. I generally
Oh,
thought this would be
yeah.
rubbish, just because I thought it was
Oh,
going to be a
wow.
bit fluffy, a bit pointless, a bit of a fun kind of like romp through Barbie world. But boy, was I wrong. I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed this and how invested I became very early on, and how into the messages I got and into the story and into all of it. I just, it surprised me. And then you hear all the buzz. Oh, this is really good, and it's telling this deep, meaningful story. And even though it's Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach writing, I still kind of always in the back of my mind thought, is it though? A bit like Thor, is it though? And then with the whole Barbenheimer going on, I thought, are we just getting sucked into this to sell tickets? But I was like, no, damn, this is really surprising me how much I enjoyed this film, and it's very high in my top films of the year, which I never thought would happen at the beginning of the year. So that's on me, and I own that one. Barbie surprised me. The second runner-up, JB, is Godzilla -1. Now, 2016's Shin Godzilla should have alerted me to this being potentially very good, because that film was Shin Godzilla's great. So I shouldn't have been blinkered by, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla versus Kong, and things like that. That's kind of in my head. I'm going to watch Godzilla -1. I again heard good things, was pumped for it, but I was surprised by just how engaged emotionally and narrative I was with this film, and I couldn't believe how much I loved this when I came out of the theatre. Big old angry Godzilla, a beautiful coupling and family story, the political overtones they combine to create a real banger of a film. This, there are not many. There's again, no, this isn't necessarily a spoiler for anything later on, but I don't. I only gave a handful of 5 stars last year. This is one of them. I think it's a 5-star film. It really, really got me, and a lot of that is like any good reviewer. I think you should extol your thoughts upon the film rather than just saying it looked good, it sounded good. No, but a lot of it was, I was surprised at how much it affected me, and that's why it got that bump in ratings. But
Yeah.
the most surprising film of the year, John, for me, in a year where damn did we get films about Tetris and Cheetos and sneakers, the most surprising film
Oh,
of the year for me is Blackberry.
I thought, yeah, awesome, awesome.
I did not for one second think I would give two damns about the story of the creators of the BlackBerry smartphones. But again,
Which we
was
should
I
have learned
wrong?
from the Social Network that that's not always the case. But yeah, totally.
Exactly. I think it's more because I was looking at it like this year, as mentioned, you had Air, Flaming Hot, BlackBerry, I'm sure there's another one, just like origins of these multi-million-dollar conglomerate companies. But the story of Mike Lazaridis and Doug Freakin, who founded BlackBerry alongside Glenn Howerton's Jim Balsillie, was one of the most engaging and stupidly entertaining films I saw, and tense films I saw in 2023. I think this is comfortably Jay Baruchel's best performance at live action, at least. And I think the performances actually throughout are incredibly good. And there's this real chaotic energy that permeates Blackberry. And I think it's the cinema verite style of filmmaking that Matt Johnson, who directs it, employs, really puts the audience in the room with the characters. You are in there, and that really allows for the tension to grow that bit more. But rather than focusing on the product or anything else, they just focus on the men behind the company, which is why I think the film really succeeds. We get to understand their motivations, we see them change, specifically Mike Lazaridis, and we get to see how they deal with the major moments individually. And I also like the fact that Johnson doesn't necessarily show maybe everything that ever happened. He picks what we need to see. There's no unnecessary subplots. There's no fluff in this film. It felt so taut, and it's so compelling, and it's a very rewarding experience. And I put at the end of my review, we may know the outcome of this story, But waiting for that implosion has really felt so gratifying in a film like this. Really, really surprised me. So Blackberry is my most surprising film of 2023, JB.
I like that. Good pull.
Thank you, my friend. So, yeah, from most surprising film, what's next, JB?
Oh, is that how it works? Sorry.
It is.
Yeah. So we're going now, I think, to our big categories that we start to get into here, and we're going international, which makes sense for this podcast because we are international. But um,
We are.
this is our best international feature. So Matt, I'd like to know what your best international movies were this year, and for you, do American movies count as international films?
I thought this again. I thought this while I was writing. I was like, well, every film's international for me, apart from a select few that get released over here. No, I guess any uh, non-English language film would cast as international. I'll call it that. So, my first runner-up, JB, is a film we both caught at Fantasia. It's called Red Rooms, Les Chambres Rouges.
Uh,
Um,
oh yes.
yeah, at its core, it's a psychological thriller and a character study of the of the perverse, obsessive, and most dangerous members of society framed through a trial going on, a courtroom trial, and it's a damn good one as well. There's a few, I know you thought so as well, there's a few very intense scenes or kind of jaw-dropping scenes, there's one in particular. And it's a taut, tense, shocking, and most importantly, very, very good thriller. Very, very good thriller, Red Rooms. I recommend anyone check it out. Second one, the second runner-up, JB, is one I've just mentioned, Godzilla Minus One, for all the reasons I have just mentioned. That's why it's my second runner-up in the best international feature. I think it's incredibly good. But my best international feature is one I mentioned at the top of the show, Smoking Tigers. This was a
Mm.
film directed by So Young's Shelley So, who in 2022 pitched the idea of the film to Tribeca's Untold Stories program, and basically the winning pitch receives $1 million and a guaranteed screening of the film at the next year's edition of Tribeca. So Young Shelley O won. The $1 million to spend on the film was spent wisely because I absolutely adored this film, JB. Ji Young Ju's Korean American teenager Ha Young. She's having a tough time trying to comprehend her parents' separation. She's caring for her younger sister Ara. Plus, she's got the stress of high school as well. She's studying for college entry exams, and she meets a new group of friends, but she can't show them the real her. She's Korean American; they are American. Because the reality of her life compared to theirs, she thinks she is somehow lesser. It kind of combined. It all sounds a bit like a typical coming of age dramedy, and there are plenty of coming of age traits throughout this, but this is just a big old drama focusing on teenage and familiar struggles, being the outsider looking in, friendship, stress, love, all that good stuff. And it's set in the late 2000s, so it's got just a nice little nostalgic throwback feel as well, which maybe grounds the film in a way that setting it now wouldn't have done. I've mentioned the look of this film. I think Hae-jin Jun creates a very, very gorgeous looking film out of something which could have just been pretty run of the mill. And Masayoshi Fujita's delicate score is also very, very good. And the silence, you mentioned with like Ludwig Göransson, how this film uses silence and the way they strike that balance is so well done. But in the lead, Ji Young Yu is fabulous leading this film. And the film's pretty simple, but it's one that gets, for me, pretty much everything right. So you can have a simple premise, but you've still got to nail those basics. And if you can do that and elevate it like this film does, it's a huge win. It's beautifully shot. It's wonderfully placed. I think the writing is very sharp and smart. It's well acted. A very good emotional undercurrent. Again, adored this movie, JB, and this one was from Tribeca. So, Smoking Tigers was my best international feature. What about yourself, John?
So as we mentioned at the top, I could easily go with a lot of the movies people are going to be talking about with the award season. Some
Yep.
really great international films I have seen, and I do think they're great. I went with more like personal ones that really clicked and resonated for me for one reason or another. My first runner up is The Promised Land. Mads Mikkelsen. Um, it's kind of got like There Will Be Blood vibes. As someone on Letterboxd has, There Will Be Potatoes, because that is like he's trying to prove himself. He's trying to earn his place in nobility. He asks for a piece of land that they say is you can't grow anything on this land. He's like, I will. And then he ends up in a kind of a feud with this duke who claims that it's his land. And it's a battle of attrition at times. There's some very extreme violence, and Mads is at like the top of his game. He's just being awesome.
No.
It's a really, I was just like, when it ended, I was like, what a movie. I was just kind of like floored by it. It's quiet. It's very like slow at times, but man, it's so methodical, so intentional. Really stood out to me as a top movie. I hope people. I think it's not coming out till February in the States, even like on a wide release, but
Mhm.
it did have a qualifying run, so it is eligible for 2023. Um, I love movies about teachers. What a shock! And I went. There's a couple that were international. There's the Teachers Lounge, which I saw and was really, really good. But the one that resonated with me was a little bit more upbeat, and it's called Radical. Stars Eugenio Derbez, and it's based on a true story about this teacher in a Mexican border town, plagued by violence and neglect and just corruption, and it deals with a lot of stuff that parallels with the American education system in a lot of ways. And I really connected with the teachers. Um, General unwillingness to let the system beat him down until it kind of does. But a movie that definitely resonated with me a lot. Um, but my favorite international film of the year was one that I had no idea I was going to love. But I am so grateful for Neon for sending us their box for our consideration, because I got to see Perfect Days, which essentially is Patterson 2. Um,
Oh,
I love Patterson. Jim Jarmusch's Patterson's one of my favorite films. I can throw it on and I just zone into it and I love it.
it's
And that is
gorgeous.
what Perfect Days is in so many ways. Although I think there's an emotional surprise ending that I wasn't ready for with Perfect Days that I think works really well. And also my awareness of the cool Japanese public toilets that I knew nothing about before this movie. Um, it is a movie about a man who cleans toilets, and there are several scenes of him scrubbing toilets. And but some of the bathrooms are like so cool and also nerve wracking because like the whole wall goes opaque when you lock it. But I'm just like, I would somehow turn it back transparent while I was peeing, and everyone would see me, and I would be going to jail. Like
Or worse.
I would never be able to use those bathrooms. But Wim Wenders is the director, and I got to give a shout out to the star, Koji Yakusho. He is this quiet internal actor. Man, he gives such a performance. It just I'm watching. I'm like, it's got Patterson vibes, and it's a movie that just really resonates while I'm watching it, and I absolutely adore it. I can't wait for you to get to see it. I think you'll have a similar reaction. But
Man, that's right up my alley. I like you. I love Patterson. I think it's a gorgeous slice of life film. So yeah, that's one I would absolutely love to check out. And I dig into that, or non-English language films. So the more I can find, the better. And they sound like three pretty tidy ones, JB. So let's move on from one big category to another big category. We are now moving into best animated feature. John, what have you got?
well, I'm going to start with my runner-up. I've already mentioned once, which is Nimona. I love this film, and I'm going to stand for it. I want everyone to see it. It is on Netflix, so it makes it even easier for people to catch. I don't think it because it was directly to Netflix. A lot of people have slept on it. I don't know if it's going to get an Oscar bid. I really think it should. Like I am much more up on some of the big studio animated films than a lot of other people. Like I'm lukewarm on Wish. I would even say more positive than most. I liked Elemental, where a lot of people really slept on it.
Mhm.
And honestly, Migration way better than it deserves to be. Like Migration is really solid, but
Ducks.
Nimona is leaps and bounds ahead of that, and it should be watched. So I can't rave enough about it. Next one I think qualifies as an international film too, but Robot and Dog,
Hmm.
another Neon film. It's almost silent if it isn't silent, as far as like there's no dialogue. It is this treatise on friendship and hope and whimsy, and there's some incredible animation. It is an independent studio. Like this is not a studio whatsoever. Like the level of animation, there is a dance sequence that I can't imagine how many man hours would have gone into animating. It is incredible. It's so sweet. It's so loving. I only really knew to watch it because of Big Tuna. This is one of his favorite films of the year, and I agree it is a masterpiece. Where I totally disagree with Tuna is my favorite animated film of the year, and it's I wish it was a big surprise, but it's Across the Spider-Verse. People like it is everything I wanted from a superhero movie, everything I wanted from a sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, a movie that shocked me and surprised me when it came out. I have seen it so many times, and I've talked about it. I've taught it. This is a film that I've now defended because some people think it's not a complete film. I'm like, no, the story in this film concludes. it then has a epilogue that sets up the next film. That's how I have
Ooh.
always viewed it. I still feel that way. I don't. I think this movie is complete and it's setting up. And we knew there was another one coming. Always, like they had never shied away from that. The second they announced the sequel after Into the Spider-Verse, they told us we were getting two. We'll probably get more because it's a money making monster for Sony, and that's what Sony is all about. But it's in a year where we got what, like 10 superhero films. It is
Ooh.
leaps and bounds better than all of them. And the again, it changed the way we're going to see animated films. Animation has now really upped its game because of Into the Spider-Verse. This one continues in that trend. And yeah, it does a lot of things people don't like. That I happen to enjoy. I like multiverse stuff, especially when I think it's being done well. And I think this one, especially after establishing the first film, it uses the multiverse in a lot of fun ways. It references itself, but it's also true to its characters. And that opening sequence with Gwen is so cool. They changed the animation style to have the watercolors, and it looks incredible. So this film has stayed with me. I did see it twice. I adored it both times, and I bought it. I did buy the steelbook for this one. So unlike the
Good man.
Turtles, which is just sitting in the cart, I immediately pre-ordered the steelbook for this. Partly because it's my daughter's one of her favorite films. So much so I don't even know if it was fully intentional, but she's kind of rocking Gwen's haircut at this point. So,
Nice.
um, yeah. So it's a movie that just it's the hands down the best animated film of the year.
Nice. Three solid picks. Well, I'm going to steal some of your thunder, JB, for my first runner up
Mm-hmm.
is Nimona. Um, I think this is. I've written, man. I remember you telling me about this film. It's one that, again, I saw the cast: Chloe Grace Moretz, Riz Ahmed in the lead. So I would have caught this one anyway. But I remember you saying that this was. I think you caught it before me. It's really good fun. Check it out. And I'm so glad I did because it's such a fun film. And thematically touches on some pretty heavy stuff. LGBTQ relationships, mental health issues, diversity, corruption. There's a lot going on here, but it never loses track of
Yes,
the fact that it's also just a really fun story. And the
a
funniest
cool
part is,
medieval futuristic story.
yeah, exactly. With big shape shifting main character, which I thought was so much fun and so well done. But yeah, the funniest thing is Disney really dropped the ball, didn't they? Because this was their film, this was on their slate, but they were like, no, we don't fancy this. Netflix picked it up, and we win because of it. I'd love to see it get some more buzz generated around it. I don't know how well it'll fare when it comes into the secondary awards like the Oscars compared to the BAMPies, but we both really enjoyed Nimona, so that's worth something. My second run up, JB, is The Boy and the Heron. I think it's just an eloquent and
Yeah,
powerful send off for one of the industry's greats, Hayao Miyazaki, one of the great storytellers of cinema for nearly 4 decades, nearly 5 decades almost. But the animation is crisp. It's probably Ghibli's strongest animation in terms of how it looks. Some of the scenes towards the beginning, let's just say where there's fire, for example, just look mind-blowingly good,
yeah. Oh my God.
incredibly good. Now, I will say, and we mentioned this on the review, I think the narrative, the story, it's almost trying to stop itself from derailing a little bit for me in the second half, but it becomes so emotional and so impactful by the end that the experience, like Joe has said, she said, like what you feel is in fact the appeal. This may not be Ghibli's greatest movie, but it's still better than almost every other animation coming out this year. It's a wonderful film, but unsurprisingly, guess what my best animated feature is for the year, John?
It's
It's
got to be
Spider-Man
Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse. Somehow managed to top one of the best comic book films ever, Into the Spider-Verse. They've seen that, and again, hold my beer. They've one upped it. The animation is insane. The different styles and techniques they use. The needle drops are excellent. The voice acting, especially Shamik Moore as Miles Morales and Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy, is imperious,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just damn entertaining. It's so heartfelt, gripping, dramatic, epic in scale, and you called the ending one thing. I'll say that damn cliffhanger, man. I think it's so well done though, and I know some people were a bit upset. Well, oh, it doesn't feel like an ending, or but it felt like a very very good ending. Like you mentioned, like the epilogue side of it and how they actually do it is. We know there's another film coming, similarly to how Doom did it, and that we know there's other films coming. View it through that angle, but it expands on the story, and our characters now really have proper human existential situations to deal with. There's drama, tragedy, many laughs along the way. John just keeps schooling me on chai tea, TT. And listen, people can say it's a visual onslaught. I know, so I have heard people say it gets to be too much, but for me, I was blown away by the variation. I think alongside the wonderfully crafted narrative and the gut punches that we get, alongside some incredibly well delivered and choreographed action, I understand how it could be overwhelming for some, but I think it's a testament to the entire creative team that, for me, that wasn't the case. The pacing, the editing, they kill that. There's times where the film thunders along. There's times where it's allowed to breathe, and I think that is to the film's credit that it never misses a step. And there's no better way to say it, John. My feelings for this film than to quote a very famous thespian who once said, my favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie, like, go to the theater, film movie, kind of the reason why you go to watch something on the big screen, man. Whoever that guy was, Shakespeare, I don't know what his name is, Shakespeare or something, but that's how we feel about this film. Is it the best comic book movie ever? Probably. For me, it could very well be, and it's not hyperbole or recency bias again. I think it's a sensationally good film, and I worry about the third film because you got to be as good
Can it?
as this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And Styles fans, please don't come at us.
yeah,
So
yeah. Please don't.
we
But
moved
easy win for me.
from
Easy win.
best animated feature to Matt's favorite category, the one he's done the most research in. These are best documentary films. I have seen 30 documentaries from 2023, which is still, I think, by comparison to the 100, almost 200 movies, sorry, over 200 movies I've seen this year, a small percentage of them are documentaries. It feels like more, but not. And Matt said the same thing. It feels like he's watched more, but I think he just barely had enough to make a list. So, Matt, what are your best documentaries of 2023?
You ain't kidding, man. I caught 4 documentaries this year, and one of them I can't remember the name of, so that just didn't make the cut. It wasn't actually. It wouldn't have actually made the cut. I think it was a decent documentary. It was about somebody who speed ran games, so they had records for
Yeah, I remember
completed
you seeing
games.
that. I
Yeah,
skipped it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was okay, but it was about a Twitch streamer. A very moving story, but I couldn't remember the title, so therefore it didn't make the list. But the third one is one which we both saw, and it was okay. It's called The Goosebang Miracle. I really like the intrigue in it, and I really liked how it was presented and how the director kind of made you shift allegiances throughout. How it ended, maybe left a lot to be desired, but however, it's not a film. It's an apparently like allegedly true story. Um, so the kind of switch up towards the end was a bit abrupt, but I loved the idea of it, almost like a true crime feel to it. So if you're into that, I think you'll like the first 2/3 of this. Second runner up is Stan Lee, the documentary about Stan Lee, which was on Disney Plus. Again, we saw
What?
this at Fantasia. Yeah, man, exactly. I've only
I
seen a
didn't
few
skip.
this year, and it's a good documentary. Does it dive into every facet of Stan Lee's life? No. This is going on Disney Plus. It's a celebration of Stan Lee. They're not talking about any of his feuds, any of his misdemeanors. It's all about Stan Lee. It's very condensed, but I thought the way that they got archival interviews, archival audio, and the way they blended that in with the cartoon style graphics, I thought that was very cool. And a nice little tribute to Stan Lee, if not the greatest. And the best documentary I saw this year, only because I saw it twice, because we had the director and the producer on Star Wars Sessions, was A Disturbance in the Force, how the holiday special was created, the Star Wars holiday special. We had
Which is a fun one.
it's fun. Yeah, we had Jeremy Coon, who produced Napoleon Dynamite. He came on the show alongside, and he directed this documentary. And Kyle Newman, who was in Fanboys and many other things, he came on the show and
I
we
like
spoke
those.
about the documentary. And hearing them talk about it and just how they crafted and created it was a cool insight. And for me, as a huge Star Wars fan, I knew an awful lot of some of the ins and outs of how this holiday special was made because when you're in a geek fandom, you search these things out. But I learned a few new things about it. I learned about the variety TV uh, industry of the 70s and the machine, should I call it? Some of the directorial choices, more about Lucas's involvement and then subsequent non-involvement. Um, and it was just fun. You know, they had great guests. Of course, they wheeled out Kevin Smith. We love Kevin Smith, but when it comes to it, that man would go to the opening of an envelope if he could. But he was on it. Seth Green was there. Weird Al Yankovic. A lot of the people who worked on the holiday special. It's just good fun. Was it the most mind blowing documentary? Maybe not. Is it for the wider mainstream, the wider audience? Absolutely not. It's a very niche documentary. But for this guy, because of my allegiance to the
Limited viewing.
Force, it was must see viewing. But it's not one which I can sit there wholeheartedly and say it probably wouldn't be in most people's top 5 or 10. But for me, you only saw 4. It was the only one that's going to be number one. So you though saw a
It's
lot.
And I've seen pretty much all of the potential Oscar shortlisted documentaries, minus a couple, but none of those are going to be on my list here. I decided to go with the more personal ones, but like I want to shout out real quick: Beyond Utopia, Rule of Two Walls, 20 Days in Maripol, all very emotional, really
Yeah,
devastating documentaries, especially Rule of Two Walls and 20 Days in Maripol, which are filmed inside the Ukraine war right now, and there is some visuals that I wish I'd never seen because of the horrors of war, and I think are must see viewing. However, I wanted to go with some movies that maybe are less known and definitely dealing with much lighter stuff, but maybe resonated a little more for me.
okay,
First one is BS High. BS High
yeah,
is on HBO Max, and as a teacher, things like this really hit because it's about a coach who lies and cons people into basically getting an ESPN game for a team that really doesn't exist. There's no school for this team, and this con being exposed, and how blatant he is, and like he's doing an interview just like this, and you're just like, this guy is evil, like that he's so confident, cocky, just sitting here telling the story. Really compelling, crazy story. Next up is my second runner up or whatever is Rather, and it's about Dan Rather, and I'm a
Dan Rather.
I'm a journalist, and I loved this documentary. I thought, seeing the power of journalism, specifically through this one journalist and how he approached giving the news, I just found it really captivating and compelling, and a great tribute to this man, who journalism's really changed over the last 20 years, and it's a shame because it's a vital part of any democratic system. Not to say journalists are not evil; they definitely some are, but good journalists are important to keeping truth and honesty out in the world. Hopefully. And the last one you mentioned, Kevin Smith. Well, this one is inspired by Kevin Smith's film Chasing Amy. This is
Yeah.
Chasing Amy. I don't know if any of I don't know the availability of Rather. I feel like it's gonna be real hard to see Chasing Amy unless you see it at a festival right now,
Mhm.
but it's a really personal documentary because it's not about the movie Chasing Amy, and yet it is, but it's specifically about the filmmaker's experience and relationship to Chasing Amy, and how they use that film as a way of dealing with their own changes and struggles and finding acceptance. And I think the power of cinema to show us is so important, and we don't often get fair representation. I can't say that as a white male. I have had millions of representation on screen, but we have been pushing for better representation of all people, and this movie explores that exact thing. A person as a teenager finding a film that they finally looked at a screen and like, that's me, and how it affected their life for the better and the worse, and their relationship with it and how it affected the relationships. It is such an intimate and personal documentary. I was I cried multiple times. I was just really connected. And of course, I am myself a Kevin Smith fan, so that side of that documentary, while I can't speak to the same idea of representation, that idea of finding this connection, the reason I started podcasting was Kevin Smith, and the reason I decided to lose weight and start exercising was because Kevin Smith almost died of a heart attack, and I was like, I don't want to die of a heart attack. So I really connected with this doc, and there was no way I couldn't put it as my number one because it was such a personal documentary for the filmmaker, but I connected it to it at such a personal level. And I did reach out to the filmmaker after seeing it and was like, I really was moved by this, and I actually we had an email exchange. Really, really kind person, and I feel I don't know if spoiling is an accurate thing for documentary, but I'm purposely not saying names and stuff because of the nature of the documentary, and I would rather just people experience it if you can. So Chasing Amy, um, check it out. Um,
I
yeah.
remember
So now
when you'd
you
seen this, I
mhm.
remember you saying how much joy you got out of this and how much emotion you got out of it. So I can't say I'm surprised that it is your number one, uh, my friend. And hopefully,
Yeah,
us mentioning these documentaries, whether we say they're the best in the best ever or they meant something to us, hopefully go check them out. And maybe I can take my own advice and check out more documentaries. I said I would last year.
they're
I
really
think I actually
good.
watched less this year, but I will try. I will actually aim this year, John, to watch at least one a month. I will try. So then next year I'll have a much
Now's a
better
good time. You should
palette.
try to find the five Oscar nominees at least before the Oscars. Would be my encouragement to you. Try to watch at least those if you can.
Well,
I know sometimes it won't be available for you to see them because of the chaos.
I will do my very best, Josh. Good tip actually. But well, documentaries aside, we're now moving into what some would consider to be the the creme de la creme of any awards. We are now moving into the acting, the directing, and obviously the top films of the year. But we're going to start off, John, with best supporting actress. So, who's your runners up, and who is your winner for this year?
So my runner-up number one is Claire Foy for All of Us Strangers. An emotionally powerful movie. Just that's another film that's really stayed with me. I've only got to see it once. I really want to see it again. It's devastating, but man, is it really, really good. And Foy is there's a scene with I actually don't remember the lead's name right now. He's also tremendous, but there's a scene with him and her that is so good. It's so crushing, and just really reminds you that Foy is a really talented actress, despite A
She
Girl in the
really is.
Spider's Web. Um, Next up, one that's getting a lot of buzz, anyways, but I couldn't help but put her on my list is Emily Blunt for Oppenheimer. Um, she's. I hope supporting is correct for that. Now I'm like, oh
Yeah,
wait,
yeah,
is
you're
she
right.
lead? Is she? Okay, because she
She's
is
supporting.
the lead female,
Yeah,
but it's a supporting role, for sure. But yeah, I love Emily Blunt, and I think she's really good. The one scene where she really gets to shine in the film is a deposition scene, and she just crushes
yeah,
like a lot of that. But my favorite supporting performance is Divine Joy Randolph from The Holdovers. There's a scene. I won't spoil it for you, Matt, but there's a scene in the kitchen of a Christmas party where it brought me to rubble last night watching it the second time. Like it worked on me the first time, but this time around I was really paying attention to her because she'd stuck out. I really became aware of her as an actress from Only Murders in the Building season 2 and 3. She is the police officer who's investigating the murder of the season each time, and she's been great on that show. This was my first time really like aware of her in a movie, and she's also surprising. I watched Office Christmas Party for the first time, and she's security guard in that movie, and I was like, "Yay!" I think she needs more work, and this film just showcases she is a talent. She brings so much emotion and so much. There's like a natural effervescence about her that I just really, really clicked with in Holdovers, and her and Giamatti just have really solid chemistry in a platonic way, which I appreciate. I like when movies allow for a male and female character to just be platonic friends, and it's
yeah,
not pushing
yeah.
some romantic agenda, and yet there's a clear respect and an admiration between the two, but it's not that type of admiration. I think it's really powerful, and it really works in the Holdovers.
I wish I'd seen the film
So
because I know that Divine Joy
I
Randolph
know.
is getting buzz. So, and that's I
I
wanted to
really
see
hope
her.
she pulls it off.
Oh man, well
I think it's probably
maybe
going
she.
to go to Blunt for the Oscars, but I don't know, man. There's a big push for the Holdovers right now. I'm like, let's give it to her, please.
I think they're waiting for me to see it before they make their decision. But I would love to have seen it for that reason. But so for that reason, of course, she's not going to be on my list because I haven't seen the film. Maybe she would have done. But for me, my first runner-up, John, is Julianne Moore from May December. May
Oh,
December, man, you've got Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman. That need I say more in terms of titans of acting, to the best actors working nowadays, going head to head against each other. Julianne Moore, I think she excels again in a very highly charged, very dramatic role, balancing heavy emotions and a heavy subject. I'm not going to spoil what the film's about, and kind of the swings that come along, the emotional and mood swings that go along with that. She makes it look so easy, which is so a testament to how good she is as an actor. That I'm watching this and I just believe that she is this character whom she is portraying, which is not an easy character to play. So Julianne Moore is my first run up. Second runner up, John, is Vanessa Kirby from Napoleon. I thought this was a towering
Wow.
performance in a let's be diplomatic, a less than towering movie. She was by far the best part of Napoleon. I thought she was huge in this film, and without her and her, I don't know, there's something that she's just a really biting performance. And whereas I think Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon is just Phoenix in a hat, I felt more believable with Kirby as Empress Josephine. I think she brings a seduction to the role. There's a sexiness there, but there's a real grit and steeliness to her performance. And I really like what they did with her with the real life character bit in the film. I like how they kind of didn't change her story, but they brought her more to the forefront. And Vanessa Kirby is really, really, on a hot
She
streak.
is.
She's really proven she's one of the up and coming or one of the best actors out there now. But she didn't take the BAMPie for me for best supporting actress. For me though, JB is one whom actually I'd clocked this one when I first saw it, and I voted for this lady in the UK Film Critics Association as well when she went on to win. I think for best supporting actress over here for the UK Critics Association I'm in, and that's Rachel McAdams for Are You There, God? It's Me,
Oh, how
Margaret.
sweet.
I thought she is just excellent. She is the soul of the entire movie. I thought she, without ever meaning to put down anyone else in the film, because I think everyone's great, but I think she is the best part of the film. She steals the film. She's got such warmth, and again, I used the word again, but a steel to her as well, that she becomes like the heartbeat of the entire movie. And let's be honest. I mean, the role itself could have just been a stock role, frustrated, overworked mum, but she turns it into this layered and passionate portrayal. She elevates what could have been a fairly vanilla role. She's attempting to find peace and balance for herself and riding the wave of her daughter Margaret's development, physical development, emotions. And the way she does it is so heartwarming, so wonderful to watch, so joyous. And her uh, interactions, shall we say, with her husband, played by Benny Safdie, her parents, because she's Christian, her husband in the film, Benny Safdie, is Jewish. Her parents disowned her because of this. So that's a big plot of it as well. So she gets a lot of big moments coming out of that. She loves painting and art, but she ends up joining the PTA that cuts out stars for loads of stars, and how that all plays off. It's such a heartwarming film anyway. I love this film, but I think she is excellent in it. She's the best of an excellent ensemble in that film. So for me, Rachel McAdams is the best supporting actress for the BAMPies.
Very good. A great performance for sure.
What's next?
Man, I can't get the flow of this. Best supporting actor is next. In my head, you finish and then you should introduce the next, and it's like it's wrong. It's the other way around. So, best supporting actor is the obvious counter to the previous. Matt, who are your best supporting actors for 2023?
Two possibly obvious ones. One a little bit more out there. My first runner-up is Glenn Howerton in Blackberry. Man, did
That
I
makes
enjoy
sense.
him in this role. He nails everything required of him as this charismatic, slimy businessman who takes the reins of Blackberry. And to be fair, he sends it into the stratosphere, but also brings it crashing back down to earth and pretty much kills off the company. And he stole the movie for me with a complete balls out performance that caught me off guard. Now, look, I'm aware of Glenn Howerton. I know he's a very good actor, but I thought he was just incredibly charismatic in this film, and it stuck with me. This role
Almost
was
unrecognizable.
yes,
Like
the way they
like I
changed his
didn't realize it was
appearance.
the always sunny guy. Yeah,
Yeah, he's got lack of hair in comparatively to how I'm used to seeing Glenn Howerton, and that's not a bad thing. But yeah, this is one of the ones I put down on the Bampies list early on as a kind of I put you in there now so I remember, but I didn't need to because I immediately
yeah.
remembered when I come back to doing this. Yeah, it's almost like a Titanic struggle. I don't know if yours is the same, but there are two actors who, in reality, outside of the Bampies, people are tipping for this award for the Oscars, and they're both in my list. But in which order? My first runner-up, John, is Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay.
He's my first runner-up, I think, and a lot of people aren't going to like this. Maybe yourself, John, but I think with the shackles of Marvel finally gone, RDJs are
Oh,
able to act again. Let's forget about Doolittle. That never happened. but he's able to just perform again. Now, I don't mean that negatively because the MCU is you do what you need to do in a comic book film, and there are some good, and he brings it in those final few films. But this is a different game. Playing the role of Lewis Strauss gave him a role he could sink his teeth into, and he sunk his teeth into this role. I love the makeup and
He's good.
hairstyling on him, and his back and forth with Alden Ehrenreich, who also think goes under the radar. I think he's excellent in this, and
I
Oppenheimer
agree.
himself. They're magnetic conversations, and it's great to see RDJ excel like this. We know he can do it, and it's so good to see him really get into a role like this. And his portrayal is so damn good. Like when we first meet him, oh, it's Robert Downey Jr. We love Robert Downey Jr. And as the film goes on, we start to see the politics of it all come out, and I think he portrays the character and the changing perception so damn well. And in any other year, he is the standout for me. But like I said with some of the other categories, sometimes you've got to go with your gut and you've got to go with what you made, what was the most memorable. John, for me, the best supporting actor of 2023 was Ryan Gosling in Barbie. We say RDJ ate his roll up. Ryan Gosling ate this up and went back for seconds and thirds. He had the whole damn buffet. There's so much effervescence and enthusiasm. It's hard to look elsewhere for me. There's more to the role here as well. I think there's a distinction to be made. He's not just this oiled up beefcake in snazzy outfits. There's more to the role than just that. And Gosling sells the hell out of it, out of the depth and development that this character gets. There are so many people who, at the end of this film, were very angry at what they perceived the film was trying to say, and how where Ken ends up. But no, man, where Ken ends up is excellent. I mean, he's singing about it, and it's such a positive message for Ken and for all of the Kens out there. And if you've missed that, then I feel sorry for your son. But come on. But his enjoyment of playing Ken is infectious on screen. Off screen, it's been a joy to see the interview process and the press tour for this. And I think the
Yeah.
movie suffers maybe a little bit, just a little bit, when he isn't in the thick of the action. I really like Barbie, but when he is on screen, it's magnetic to watch. Of course, I'm Just Ken. What a wonderful song that is. And it's just a memorable turn. And whilst it could be argued that others on my list, let alone yours or the wider variety, you could say that the other two on my list are maybe deeper or better acted. This one took it for me because it swept me up the most. I got most into this character and what they were trying to say and sell to me. So Ryan Gosling as Ken was my best supporting actor of the year. John, I'm so interested to know what yours are.
So my first runner-up is Dominic Sessa for The Holdovers. It's I believe his debut performance. The kid is great. He doesn't just have scenes with. I mean, he has scenes with Giamatti, he has scenes with Divine Joy Randolph, and all three of them together. But he has scenes with the other kids before, like they go on Christmas break and everything. And he's just man, he just has star power to me. He's got a very sharp kind of comedic wit that I often am a fan of. There is a sadness behind the eyes, which is really vital to this particular character. I just think it's a really great debut performance. I think debut for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen him before. He wasn't on my list until the second viewing though, and I was like, yeah, I got to give this kid
Nice.
some shout out. First runner up, Paul Mescal for All of Us Strangers.
Nice.
It's Mescal. I don't know how to say his last name, but we were like the anti for I don't even remember the movie called the summer
After
movie,
Sun.
the movie with the daughter After Sun. We both were don't like it,
It's,
and it wasn't
yeah.
him, but it just didn't click. He's in a couple other things I have seen and I did like him in, but this movie, I mean, I honestly could have said Jamie Bell for this too because I think Jamie Bell is really really good at in All of Us Strangers, and again, I feel so bad that I can't remember the lead actor's name. I should have looked it up, but he could be on my list. Neither of them are, but I do have two from that movie because it stayed with me. It's one of those films I kind of went in, I hadn't seen the trailer, I didn't know much about it. It sounded really good, and it was. And then as I keep thinking about it, I'm like, man, that movie does some really deep dive
I
personal
need to see it,
exploration,
man.
and it's really, really good. Now, Matt, I think a lot of people are going to come at you for your pick, but I'm going to back you up, man. Ryan Gosling is it. He's Knuff, guys. I mean, there's so much brilliance in his like Gosling is one of the most versatile actors because he can do comedy. Like I don't think there's another leading man who can pull comedy off like Gosling
I
can.
agree.
If you haven't seen The Nice Guys, I really recommend it. I'm hyped for the Fall Guy because of him. I just if it were anyone else in the world, I'm like, I don't know if he can do it, but like I think Gosling is perfect for that kind of old school physical humor. He does double takes like nobody else. I mean, he's just so funny. And here, like there's so much nuance to the performance, even though it's like it's big and it's this brash kind of character at times. There's so many little subtle things, even some of the joke delivery, it's said in just this kind of old school like Bill Murray screwball comedy kind of way that really works for me, and I just loved him in this film. I walked away just like what a performance. And again, like you said, it's only gotten better watching him outside of the movie embrace this movie. And yes, I think there is a little bit of desperation because he should have got the Oscar for, La La Land, maybe. Like Emma Stone gets it. He doesn't. He wants it so bad. And
Yeah.
man, if he gets it for Barbie, I mean, again, obviously Barbie has hit levels of prestige that I don't think anyone was sure it could. Even though, yes, the Gerwig and Baumbach of it all, they're both prestige filmmakers at this point, but still, like, this is an IP that no one expected to have that kind of
Yeah.
backing. And it does because it has that pedigree. But man, if he doesn't win, I will be sad. I really, really hope he gets this. But for me, he won. So you got two Bampies. Ryan, sing a song to us.
Please do.
So
We need to feel that Kennedy, that Jonergy. We need to feel it.
indeed,
Right, we're talking about. Let's bring that Jonergy to the next level. Then we've gone from the supporting roles. Now let's get into the leading roles. We're going to get into Best Actress of
my
2023.
first runner up, I
JB.
just mentioned Emma Stone for Poor Things. Um, it is one of the bravest performances, and it's sad that we have to say that, but she is allowing some crazy stuff, and she's clearly trusts Lanthimos after working The Favorite, and it has some of the most ridiculously crazy scenes of any movie. Like I imagine a lot of people have seen the dance number with her and Ruffalo at this point because there's a really great video where Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo are doing an interview together about it, and they're talking about the dance, and they're kind of like
Yeah.
doing the dance sitting down in chairs. But she is funny. She's I mean, intelligent, powerful. She's just such an incredible actress. I've been a fan of Emma Stone now, I mean, 20 plus years
Yeah.
almost, I think. I remember seeing like The Rocker, which a lot of people don't know that movie,
Damn.
but
Yeah.
Rainn Wilson and Josh Gad and Emma Stone and Teddy Geiger are in a band together. And there's a comedic cast that support that movie that is outrageous. And I love that film. It's probably not good, but for me, it works. And I've been a fan of hers for a long time. And she's tremendous in this. So Poor Things, again, when you get to see it, Matt, I know you'll enjoy it. This one was hard though because I honestly would be okay with my second runner up being the winner, which is Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. Um, I really like Killers of the Flower Moon. It's not my favorite film of the year. I'm a big Scorsese fan. I love DiCaprio. I love De Niro, but Gladstone is the one who grabbed my attention in that film. Every scene she's in, and she's not talking a lot. But
No.
man, does
No.
she give so much. There's so much to her performance. She's quiet, powerful, and just um, a presence that I was just so impressed with that she's if she were my number one, I would have no shame with that whatsoever. And I actually feel bad that she isn't because the next performance I just was so blown away by. And that's Carey Mulligan for Maestro. Um, Carey Mulligan, the second Maestro ended, I was like, she's my best actress of the year. I have become a huge Carey Mulligan fan,
Yeah.
and she is tremendous in Maestro. I didn't expect that, to be honest. I honestly didn't know what I was getting when I went to see Maestro, and I'm really glad I got to see it on the big screen. Thank you, Netflix, for letting us have that opportunity. Because I know a lot of people are going to see it only on Netflix, and I think that movie benefits from an audience and a big screen. And Mulligan's performance, man, she is just so impressive. She gives so much emotion. I just thought she was outstanding. So it was a no-brainer. As much as I think Gladstone would be deserving to have it, Mulligan just really clicked for me, and I had to put her at number one.
No, good shout, JB, because she is my first runner-up in this. I
Oh,
think, I think
okay.
she's the best performance in the film. She's got this quiet grace and poise throughout, and I think similarly to how I mentioned with Rachel McAdams, I think Carey Mulligan is the heartbeat of the film. Obviously, Bradley Cooper will get a lot of plaudits because he's a lead and he does so much for the film, and he's a lot more charismatic in his role. He needs to be. Carey Mulligan is excellent in this. She's understated excellence in this film. She's getting better and better and better with each film, and she's always a very good actress, but now she's getting better and better. The films I'm seeing in more
Hmm.
recently, and like a few actors who we've already mentioned, I think it's a matter of time before she's standing there with a golden Oscar statue. She's got a BAMPie from you, but I think she'll have an Oscar within the next decade. I think. My second runner up though, JB, is Sandra Huller from Anatomy of a Fall, which
Oh,
is
also in Zone of Interest.
yes. In outside of this, she's in for this, and she's also in for that as well in the Oscar buzz. So big year in the Huller household, but I think she's an incredibly strong
Big
performance.
time.
It's not as
So
showy
much.
as the others, is it? But I think it's far more nuanced. There's a few scenes. There's one
So
in
many layers.
particular standout. It's a big old argument scene, which I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. But what she's being asked to do, what the stuff she's being asked to portray, the actual again the film itself. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I highly recommend Anatomy of a Fall. But the story of the film and what she's asked to do and comprehend and work with, she is superb. But only makes my second runner-up, JB. The winner though for Best Actress for me, outside of those two, is Greta Lee from Past Lives. I thought
Ah,
Greta
yes.
Lee,
Good performance.
very restrained performance, but it's just dripping in nuance and culminates in this final release of pure emotion, which is it was incredible to watch first time and second time. It's just this explosion of emotion which she builds up so well because of the way she plays the character through. It's such an immediate performance, and you can also and you kind of feel the performance through her physical acting, but just as much through what she isn't saying or doing. But it's more like just the mannerisms, just how it might be the way she kind of like awkwardly shuffles when somebody says something, or her husband says something, or the way she is on the webcam when she's skyping, or just the way she smiles and the way she looks. You can tell that there's so much more going on behind the eyes, which she isn't saying verbally. And I think it's such an incredibly good performance and hopefully the breakthrough performance, because I know she's been in many other things like Russian Doll and Girls and many other things, but hopefully now we see her in. I think she's going to be in the new Tron film, I heard, but I'm not sure if she'll get the chance to act as well as she did in this film. But the way she portrays the longing, the forlornness, the love, the emotion, the sadness, and all that kind of the distance in this is masterfully done. Masterfully done. So Greta Lee wins for me, JB, for Best Actress.
So from actress, we move to actor. We want to know our best actor of 2023. Matt, who's your first runner up? I did it right. I thought I messed it up again. No, I did it right this time.
You got it. You got it. The first runner up for me, JB, is Coleman Domingo for his performance in Rustin.
Mm.
I think it's a very
Mhm.
lively, very animated performance. And
Yeah,
watching the film, I don't think the film was. I think the film was okay. I think Coleman Domingo is
it's good.
much better than the film he's in. But I learned a lot from the film, and a lot of that is from being
Me too.
so compelled by Domingo's performance as Rustin himself, that I was more engaged than maybe I would have been if somebody else was in the role. So learned a lot thanks to Coleman Domingo. Fabulous performance from him. Next run up, JB, is Barry Keoghan from Saltburn.
Oh,
I thought it
okay.
was a fabulous, and I think you've mentioned fearless when you talk about Emma Stone. I think this is a very fearless performance from Barry Keoghan, and he's one of the best actors out there today. I didn't want to call him an up and comer because guy's nearly 30, not old, but he's been around for a while now. But I just found it to be a huge performance alongside some very big names, very memorable. And of course, the final scene the final one take is, again, we're talking fearless. But my man was more worried about dancing than anything else. Like, man, you've got some balls. No pun intended. But but
Pun
I just thought
intended.
his incredibly memorable performance in a film which I think we were both surprised that we enjoyed the film as much as we did.
Yeah, we're on the one side. There's a lot of people on the other side of that argument.
Yes, but this is a devilish performance, and I think Keoghan,
Oh,
again, like Carey Mulligan, strength to strength to strength to strength. The winner of Best Actor for me, this was nailed in, I think, from the time I saw the film, and nobody's done enough to overtake Cillian Murphy or Killian Murphy in Oppenheimer. I think this is a staggeringly good performance from Killian Murphy,
Oh
charting
yeah,
J. Robert Oppenheimer's early days to his kind of days post Hiroshima. He captures so much in this steely and powerful performance, and it was easily the pick of the bunch for me. It's such a thoughtful portrayal, even in the tougher moments for Oppenheimer himself. Murphy brings such a complexity to it. I thought it was outstanding what he does in this film. The transformation, like physically, I think the accent is spot on. And I've sometimes I listen out for the accents and it bugs me if it's not right. I think it's great here. And and I think this plays more into Nolan and the cinematography as well. But the image of Killian Murphy, you mentioned it earlier on, hat on, cigarette alight, just staring back at the viewer. That might be the most iconic shot of the year. Like,
yeah.
when you think of 2023, you think of that shot. And yeah, everything about his performance in a 3 hour long film and what he's asked to do from the different periods of Oppenheimer's life, incredible. This was nailed on for me, and I knew it would be a tough job for anyone to top Killian Murphy this year, and nobody did. So he is my winner of Best Actor. John, is he yours? Why don't you tell me? Let's find out.
Runner-up number one is Michael Fassbender for The Killer, a
Ooh.
movie that I don't feel is getting enough love, and I'm just like I'm throwing all of my love at it because I am a David Fincher fan, and I'm a Michael Fassbender fan. He's we don't get enough of him, and he's done some movies that I've avoided, and some that I've seen that I wish I hadn't, and this one is not one of those. This one I think he's great. I think there's so much to the performance because one, he is supposed to be a blank slate, and yet he's not a blank slate. He's an unreliable narrator. He's doing, most of his voice is just through voiceover. We're hearing internal monologue, and then he's giving this quiet, crazy performance. There's some really physicality to it. There's some humor to it, which I really took to. I just thought he was tremendous in this unique performance. My second runner up, no, we're almost done, and I still haven't latched on to the best way to do this, but it's Cillian Murphy. I think he's tremendous. I really like Oppenheimer a lot. I'm a Nolan fanboy. He is fantastic, but he didn't get my number one because I'm giving it to the man who I think wants it the most, and it's Bradley Cooper, man.
He does
For
want it.
Rocket Raccoon, no. No, I'm kidding. It's not for Rocket. Although I would give it to him for Rocket. I think he is the heart and soul of Guardians 3, and I would be more than willing to let him have it for Rocket. But Maestro, man, like not only is he like crushing it as a director, I think he is a legit director. Anyone who was questioning it after A Star Is Born, if he's like going to be one of those actor directors who's just like, I don't know, maybe like George Clooney, whose directions have not been great, or is he going to be like one of those guys who maybe he just stays behind the camera because he's so good behind it? This movie has so much style, so much flair, but his performance is powerful. It's memorable, and there's the sequence where he does the where he orchestrates I don't know what the right
Composes, conducts.
phrasing is. Oh my God, he conducts. I did know that. He conducts, and it's this full sequence, and it's so powerful. And then obviously Mulligan's right there with him, and I think they are bouncing off each other so well. The pair, to me, it was hard not to put them at one for both, and I did. I think they both deserve it. I think they're both fantastic. Cooper definitely wants it, and I think I don't want to say it's like a lifetime achievement, but he's done some incredible work and a diverse work. 'Cause, I mean, if you look at something like The Hangover, or even in his early days when he's like the fifth lead in The Wedding Crashers, he's the
Yeah.
love
Yes.
rival to Vince Vaughn. Like he's done the work, and he always seems to get better. He's a guy who is constantly into the craft, and while there's some pushback about the prosthetic nose in this, man, I don't notice it watching the film. Like it's such a crazy performance, and there's things that I totally get people who don't click with Maestro, but for me it just worked, and I love both of the performances. So Cooper is my best actor of 2023,
No, he
and
wants it. We know he wants it, JB, the Oscar, but he's got the BAMPie. So if anything, take that, Bradley, and be happy with it. But when you're talking about the direction of it all, let's move on to that, JB. Best director, our penultimate prize of the night.
it's funny because I just said all this praise, but he's not in my top. He's not in my three for director. But um, no offense to him. I think he's great. It's just he's up against some big stuff for this
It's
year.
stacked.
First, I have been raving about her for a few years now, and Greta Gerwig is a filmmaker who I will see whatever she makes, period. And I think just for what she did with IP filmmaking this year,
Mhm.
deserves to be recognized as best director because she does tremendous work. And like I was a huge Lady Bird fan, I was a huge Little Women fan. And Barbie, when it was announced, I was like, oh, why Gerwig? You could do another
Yeah,
great indie. And she kind of does. She does a great indie with tons of money. You know, like there's still that
yeah,
indie
yeah.
story underneath all of it. And it's I saw some people criticizing it being too on the nose. I'm just like, shut up. Like it's a fun movie that's also got a message, and it's an IP that I think shouldn't have worked, and it did, and I'm going to give her as much credit as possible. This one though, I think people should see coming. I love David Fincher. Gosh darn it, and The Killer isn't getting enough love. Fincher's movies are director leaden. I mean, the dude is like Kubrick as far as not just with takes, but the seeking of bringing his vision to the reality of
Yeah,
the film, and the people who click with him, it really clicks. But I really love his films, and I think The
yeah.
Killer is Fincher-esque, to quote myself.
There it
And
is. Yep. There's auteurs and then
I
there's Finchers and Hitchcocks who just have
yeah,
something.
yeah. Whether and again, not every movie they make will be a great movie, but the direction will always be exactly that. It will
Yes.
be great, and for me, it's very very clear. And I've been saying it, and I it's important because this is it's gonna not reflect my next part either. It's so weird how I decided to do this, but Christopher Nolan has earned the Best Director award. He has been snubbed for years at the Oscars, and I can't. How can you snub him this time? Like this movie, it should not be interesting. It's 3 hours long. It's about a man who destroys so
Yeah.
many people's lives because of an invention, and with this cold apathy at first, and yet the movie has the familiar elements of Nolan, of the two different time periods and how it intercuts together. I just think it's a masterpiece, and I haven't brought myself to rewatch it. It's one of the few big movies I have not seen twice, and I own it, and I plan to rewatch it at some point. And I've seen almost all of Nolan's films multiple times, except for Tenet, I think, and maybe the
Yeah.
following. Like, but I've seen Memento a dozen times. That's not true. I haven't seen Insomnia and stuff, but I've seen all of my favorite Nolan films multiple times, like
Yeah.
many times. I don't know for sure that I can with this one, but I also like I remember it so vividly, which doesn't always happen. But I do think a lot of it. Obviously, there's great performances, but Nolan's direction is fantastic in this film, and I think it's time that the Academy finally gives the man his due. He is not only like actively keeping film alive and physical media and the theatrical experience alive, something I wouldn't I'm not giving him this award because of those things, but I do think those are things we should consider with this guy,
Yeah.
and his love for the medium shows on screen to me. And you know, again, admittedly, a fanboy, can't deny it, but uh, Nolan's my pick for best director this year.
Good chat. I think the
What
Oscars
about
will.
you?
Well, I think the Academy will recognise him this year, but have I? We'll see. My first run-up, JB, is the one which you shockingly shunned. It's Bradley Cooper for Maestro.
Sorry, Cooper.
Yeah, he wants it, and I think he directed the living hell out of this
He
film.
did. He definitely did.
What
100%.
you said was spot on. This isn't just a guy who is trying his hand at directing. Star is Born was wonderfully directed. This is the next step now, and he is very. If the guy said now, I'm just going to do directing. Yeah, based on these two films, yeah, you do that because they're going to be very good. And alongside Matthew Libatique, who's the cinematographer, who I think he's worked on pretty much all of the Aronofsky films. Those two together, man, created some incredible shots and transitions and framing here. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially when it is a biopic of a composer slash conductor, a musician. What are you going to do? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to make this look sexy? But they do it. And you mentioned flair. Cooper shows real flair, and he portrays the different periods of Leonard Bernstein's life exceptionally well. He really captures the old school, the old timey films really well, and the language and the way they speak to later on in life. I think it's a very, very, very impressive second feature, big feature. And again, like you say, he wants it, and I think in his acting performance, he pulls out the stops, and I think he does the same for directing as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him be nominated for both. Probably I think he's only like the 10th person ever to be nominated for actor and director, if that was the case. Um, my first runner-up is your winner, Christopher Nolan, for Oppenheimer.
Cool.
What is there to say that you haven't just said? Not much, really. The seismic scope of Oppenheimer, the shifting color palettes and ratios, the technical achievements. It's just a fantastically directed movie, and like you said, it stays with you. There are shots in it right now I can picture them. Sadly, for those watching, you can't see what's in here. Probably for the best sometimes, but I can picture them vividly. These shots, and it's not always just reaction shots. It might just be like a panning shot or an establishing shot, but it's so impressive. But everything, the whole package of what he did, is superb for Oppenheimer. But my winner, though, JB, is again, it's I wouldn't say it's out there, but more understated. It's Celine's song for Past Lives. Very
Well,
understated,
sure.
yet so wholly methodical how this film is directed. Her song's subtlety in her direction really allows the film, no pun intended, to sing. Every sequence, every moment, every shot, every production choice, every lighting choice, every decision feels deliberate. It feels calculated, and like it is going somewhere. People will say the first half is ponderous. I think it's setting up the story. I think it's setting up what's to come. And what a debut film! This is a debut film, and it's directed so
Yeah, it's
deliciously.
wild.
It's incredible. You've got these patient,
She's so
lingering. No, go on.
patient. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I just what you were gonna say. Patient.
Yeah, patient. These you've got these heartbreaking long takes in as well, and similarly to some of the other categories I've said, maybe this film is less showy than the other films, but it is absolutely no less impressive. Her direction of the three characters, like we mentioned, Greta Lee's Nora, T.O.U.'s Haesung, and John Magaro's Arthur, like how she directs them together and in the situations, and how she presents certainly that final third act as well is powerful stuff. I just think it's an incredibly well done film, and it's been, as soon as it stayed with me for a long time. And there's shots in Oppenheimer that stay with me. There's a few more in this that stay with me. Sometimes it's just the simplicity of it, but it's what they are conveying in the shots and what Celine's song is showing us and how she's putting it all together. Just works for me, my friend. So Celine's song is my best director of the year.
So, from our best directors, we're going into our final category, the best movies of the year. What we're going to do for this, though, is we're going to do our top five. So, we're going to count down from five to our best picture of the year, and we're going to alternate, which we have not done for the rest of this. But so, Matt's going to start us off. Matt, what's your number five movie of 2023?
Well, I think I may have spoken about all of these already, which is maybe a giveaway, maybe not. So I won't labour the points too much. But my fifth favourite film of the year is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I think, is it's just an incredible achievement. I think that it's going to sweep a lot of the awards at the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Very well deserved as well. I think it's going to take a lot of the below the line awards, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does take actor, director, possibly best picture as well. But for me, it's number five for the year. But it's been a tough year to pick films in for a top five, John. But that's my five. What about yours?
It is. My number five is Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things.
Ooh.
I am a big fan of Lanthimos. Poor Things is on that same wavelength of his other stuff, and I just think the performances of both Defoe, Stone, Ruffalo, and I'm going to forget there's another dude who's really good in it, who's lesser known, but really just the set design, the story itself. It's quirky, it's weird, it's compelling, it has a message. It's just great. It's not for everyone. But if you've seen like The Lobster, The Favorite, Killing of a Sacred Deer, which has Barry Keoghan, just it's another to me win for Lanthimos. So Poor Things, my number five,
Moving on, then my number four, John. It's
number
got a
four.
number in it, but it isn't number one. But it's Godzilla minus one. It roared or smashed its way into the top five late on. I was blown away by this film. I just didn't expect it to. I didn't expect to go to a Godzilla film and cry. Other than some of the crap I've seen coming out of Legendary Pictures, which made me cry for a different reason. But man,
Different reason.
they, you know, you said it yourself. They used the Jaws effect. You know, they hold off on Godzilla, but when we see him, it's impactful. Instead, they build up the characters, so when we do see the big guy, the stakes are raised to such a level that it's impossible to not get sucked in. And yeah, the action was great. I thought the writing was great. I loved all the undertones and the overtones of it. I thought it ended very well. Godzilla was the most badass I've seen him in years, probably since Shin Godzilla. A huge surprise and a huge win. Number 4 of the year, Godzilla -1, John.
My number four, I've mentioned a couple of times now, is Maestro.
Oh,
It was a film I love the black and white section in the beginning. I just thought was so cool, and I like when filmmakers use different visuals for different time periods, and that like it starts in black and white and everything's really exciting and it has that old Hollywood vibe to it, and then that dream doesn't quite hold up, and the reality kind of sets in with the look and the aesthetic of the film, and again, Cooper's direction, Cooper's performance, Mulligan's performance, which is my favorite element of the film, and
yeah.
honestly, just learning more about Leonard Bernstein in a way that I've quoted. My favorite biopic, I think, to date is Steve Jobs, because I love how they truncate the biopic. That they're not just doing a birth to grave movie, and that's what the Maestro does as well. It finds unique ways to introduce us to who the man was, what he was like, what it was like for his stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who would take issue with either things being left out or the way things are represented
Hmm.
through that. But I find those to be endlessly more compelling to watch than the birth to death format,
Yeah.
which sometimes works, but often doesn't. Because a lot of times our lives, they're not that interesting from moment to moment to moment. There's just key moments that really pop. And while Bernstein has more than most people, the ones that Cooper tends to lean towards, I thought was really compelling. And I really enjoyed the movie. Maestro.
Number 4 for John Meisher. Number 3 now, we're getting to the podium positions. This one surprised me when I got to the end of it, but I love this film. I adored it. It's a festival film I mentioned. It's Smoking Tigers.
Oh, wow.
Just hit me. A coming of age story. Done well. Works for me. This was done very well. I think, again, I mentioned all the reasons I mentioned earlier on. Relatively simple film, but they get the basics so right for me in everything, technically and performance wise. The writing's great, and the emotions work as well. I just think it's a really intelligent film, really well done. And when I first saw it at Tribeca, I was blown away by it. And then when I found that it was, made because of the project that they have going on there to push up and coming filmmakers, the Untold Stories project. I was like, wow, this is a first film. This is our first like major film like this, and I know it did work very well on the festival circuit as well, and for good reason. I think it's a damn fine film. So, Smoking Tigers takes number 3 for me, John. What about you?
My number three is Barbie. A little more pedestrian, I think, than yours, but I saw it and I went and saw it again the next day, and I had fun. I was worried it wouldn't hold up the second viewing, that I wouldn't have as much fun, or I wouldn't be laughing at the jokes as much, and I was. And so I walked out. In fact, I think I even had more fun the second time because it was a bigger screen and it was a bigger auditorium, and it was packed because it was the Friday night. I went to the Thursday night the first time, and I've pretty much have been like, it's in my top five since then, and it's stayed there. I mean, and this list is still living and breathing, and there are times where I'm like, maybe it shouldn't be there, maybe it should, but man, I just thought there's so much to love. America Ferrera, Margot Robbie, we haven't
Yeah,
mentioned either of them, but I think they're great. The rest of that cast, there's so many great performances. Issa Rae is tremendous as the
yeah,
president Barbie, and Michael Cera as Alan. I mean, come on, it's great.
Alan.
But yeah, I really love Barbie, and I actually can't wait to rewatch it. I did buy it. I haven't got to watch it a third time, but it is on the list at some point to watch again.
Barbie was my
That's
number
three.
6 film of the year, JB. So just missed
Ah,
out
just missed.
on number 5. But number 2, the silver medal, just missing out on number 1, was a phenomenal film in its own right. It won for best animated feature. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was my
Oh,
second best film of the year,
cool. I'm so
and
curious.
for a while, for a long time, it was number 1. It was the best because it is an incredible, animated or not. Again, I wish people didn't sleep on, oh, it's a
Yeah,
cartoon or
same.
this. No. But it is art. This is art without getting too pretentious. Whatever. This is art, and it's incredibly good art. And we again mentioned earlier on all the reasons why I think this is probably the best comic book film ever. And all the reasons why I'm worried about the next film because it's got to somehow equal this, if not top it, and be satisfying. But for now, yeah, Across the Spider Verse, emotional, hard hitting, funny, got me in all of the feels. Number two for me, Across the Spider Verse. JB, how about you?
My number two is Godzilla minus one,
Wow.
a film that I've not mentioned this whole time, but I went in with, I mean, by the time I saw it, I'd heard nothing but great things. So I went with a lot of expectations, and it exceeded them. I've always liked the character of Godzilla. As a kid, I used to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000, and at the time, a lot of them were Godzilla. Those are harder to see because of licensing things now at this point,
Yeah,
and I have not seen a lot of those films, the original Godzilla, outside of that format, which is saying something. But I went and saw. I remember I was so excited. I saw the Matthew Broderick 1998 Godzilla, and I went. And I was slept on the 2014 one for a little bit, but came to it. Really liked it.
it's
I
good.
wanted this MonsterVerse to be great. It hasn't been great. There have been some good moments. There have been a lot of bad moments. I'm not. I'm really, after seeing this one, not sold on the one that's coming out in a couple of months. I think that's bad timing for them.
I know.
But this movie, and I've taught the original Gojira in class. I know the history of it, and I have a lot of respect for that movie. It is, some of the effects are hard to watch, and it's a little slow,
Of
but I
course.
still have a special place in that heart. This movie, not only does it give a lot of love to the original, it just does what the original was trying to do in a modern setting with a impressive story behind it. That it's $15 million budget, and it looks better than the majority of big blockbuster superhero movies from this year. And I am not one of those people who constantly bash the superhero movies. I am the
Yeah,
one who's constantly defending them. And this movie just blows all of them out of the water. And again, how can I not love a movie that pays homage to one of my favorite filmmakers? There's Jurassic Park and Jaws in this film, but done in a way that feels organic and natural, and it just works. And like Matt said, I never thought I would be crying at a Godzilla film, but gosh darn it, I cried at a Godzilla film, and it earned its way to number two on my list. It was so close to saying it was my favorite film of the year, but it is a masterpiece of a movie. I cannot wait to own it.
yeah, 100% agree, JB. Now, here we go.
Well, we're here. We're here.
Our favourite film of 2023,
Oh
JB. I'm
man.
so excited. Well, we've watched nearly 400 films between us, and it comes down to this. My number one film of 2023, John. And as soon as I saw it, I knew it. I knew it was Past Lives, my number one film of 2023. I think this is a sumptuous film. This earnest and personal drama. It just captures so perfectly the reality of not seizing the opportunities in front of you. And when I was watching it, I thought of this, and even more so now. And my favourite trilogy of films, artistically, is the Before trilogy, the Linklater Before trilogy. This is like a
Yeah. God.
beautiful counter to that in terms of the what if of it all, and the themes of regret and kismet hit harder as the film gently and slowly unravels, but it always retains this gentle quality. It ensures it remains nothing but compelling. There's no bad guys in this film. In other films, or with a less deft touch, one of the characters in this film, John Magaro specifically, he'd be the bad guy. He'd be the obstacle. But no, not at all. The way the film writes him is, I think, really well done. I think he's very good in the film. But the final
Brilliant.
acts
Yeah.
in this film, and not just the final shot, but the final third, the final half an hour of this film, 40 minutes, is some of the most powerful, or are some of the most powerful and emotional scenes I've seen this year, and possibly in recent years. Tears were shed, and for me, I couldn't help but reflect whilst watching this. I found myself going on a journey, a kind of what if. What if you've done this? What if you've taken this door? What if you've taken the red pill instead of the blue? And all that kind of stuff. But Greta Lee, TOU, John Magaro's layered performances, they deliver such real heart, and very, very excited to see what Celine Song does next. She's obviously my director of the year as well. And, this film about being in two people who are in the wrong place simply at the wrong time. And it's again, it's a simple concept, but it ain't nothing without the performances, the writing, and everything else that goes through it. And the philosophy of Inyun, the Korean philosophy of Inyun that they evoke throughout this film, I think is done really well. And just, at one point, Hae Sung, TOU's character from Korea, says, what if, he says to Nora, Greta Lee's character, what if this is a past life as well? What we've got now, and we're already something else to each other in the next life. Damn. And then the follow up to that and the crushing finale, it's it's an incredible film of uncertainty, grief, love, lost love, what ifs, and the film handled it so well. It hit me on an emotional level, which I wasn't expecting. I'd heard buzz around the film. I'd heard it was good, but it got me. It tapped into something here, and I think maybe all of us probably watched it at some point. Your mind wanders somewhat during it, and emotionally devastating, but also beautiful, resonating, sumptuous, delicious. All of the kind words. This film blew me away, and this is the film I mentioned that I think this has cracked my top 50. Did it have the effect that maybe Everything Everywhere had on you last year? Maybe not. Yeah. God damn, did I love this film, JB. So number one is
Good
Past
pick.
Lives. So over to you, my friend.
I'm not gonna say as much for my number one because I've already talked about it. It's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Not only did I give it animated, it's my favorite movie of the year. It is exactly what I want from a superhero film in every way. I think it is, to be fair, for a long time I rep Batman as my favorite hero, and I still
Mhm.
there's a part of me that will always love Batman, but I have over the last 4 years, especially, kind of soured on a lot of Batman's politics, and even if it's more implied, I love Spider-Man, and I've always been a Spider-Man fan as long as I can remember. It's always been Batman and Spider-Man 1 and 2, and Spider-Man has just become more and more and more of a character who I adore. And the thing I love most about this Spider-Man is it's not Peter Parker. As much as I love Jake Johnson as Peter Parker in this iteration, I love getting to see Miles. I think Miles is such an interesting character. I love Shamik's, I hope I said that right, performance, especially having juxtaposed this with the Miles Morales game and Spider-Man 2. I love Miles in the game, but I love Miles in the movie, and it's a different character, it's a different voice performance, and I really think Miles in these movies just work wonders. And like you said, the cast. I mean, in this movie in particular, the cast is way too extensive to bring up in total. Again, Issa Rae making an appearance, but Oscar Isaac's phenomenal. You get Haley Steinfeld is just incredible, and I already argued that this movie sticks the landing. I can't wait for the next movie because of how it chooses to do the epilogue. The stuff it sets up, I'm like, I can't wait to explore all of that. Like, I want to see what happens next. And the tease that we get some of what we had in that first movie,
Man.
which I love then. I can't wait to see that integrate and how it all plays out. And there's so many things that can happen and change. And man, and the family dynamic between everything, like, there's so much in this film to take and dissect. And again, we say this a lot about movies with great cinematography and stuff, but you could take any frame from this film and put it on this wall, and I would be like, "Wow, that's gorgeous." And proof is, like, the Critics Association of Central Florida posted our wins, and Into the Spider Verse was our um, animated film, but the image that we used to send the award, I'm just like, God, that's such a gorgeous image. And then I look at my steelbook, I'm like, God, that's such a gorgeous image. And I look at the thing Sony sent us promoting it, I'm like, God, what a gorgeous image. And
Yep.
some of that is just the iconography of Spider-Man just being cool anyways, but it's also the art style that they've brought into these films and the variety of art styles. And oh my God, I forgot to talk about Daniel Kaluuya. Like, Spider-Punk.
Spider Punk.
Oh my God, how great is Spider-Punk in this movie? Like, there's so much, and that's the thing. There's so much, and it never feels like it to me. Like, there's so much you can take away, but it all feels separate and its own entity. They all exist. It doesn't just feel like a hodgepodge or a collage of all of these things. It does feel like I know that guy, and I know that guy, and I know that. And you can take any moment and pull 20 things, and yet they each feel distinctive and real and established. And it's just everything about that movie, from the animation to the acting to the storytelling, to me just works, and I loved it, and I haven't forgotten it at all. So, my best animated and best picture. I don't think that's ever happened on the Bampies. It definitely hasn't happened at the Oscars. But like Matt said, we got to give animation more credit. It is one format of storytelling. It is not set in some type of age demographic or anything like that. We've had a lot this year that was clearly Boy and the Heron is not geared towards a younger audience, and Across the Spider Verse, while I think is much more kid friendly than Boy and the Heron,
Hmm.
it is not kid only. And I say the same thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Nimona. They're not geared towards children. I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider Man work for children, but I also think they work for adults. If you slept on this movie,
Yep.
you need to see it.
Yeah, and I mean these films have already left an imprint. You've only got to look online or go to conventions and see how many Spider Gwens or Spider Girls, whatever, are out there now. It's this has left an impression, and like you said, it ain't over yet. We're getting more of these films, and it's a worthy winner. And had it not been for Past Lives, for me being so damn um, engaging and incredible, this would have been mine as well. So Spider Man, Across the Spider Verse, Past Lives are our favourite films of 2023. But before we wrap up, John, let's have a quick look. Let's have a quick kind of wink and a nod towards what's coming out in 2024 and just alternate of our top 5 anticipated films of the year. Do you remember what your anticipated films of last year were, by the way?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I didn't look, so I don't know. Did
But I
you?
remember mine. I do Killers of the Flower Moon.
Okay.
I enjoyed. Indy 5. I enjoyed.
Yeah, that's
The
sad.
magic wasn't there, but I enjoyed. Then I put Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Didn't come out. Dune Part 2.
Pushback.
Didn't come out.
Pushback.
The Exorcist Believer somehow didn't make Best Picture for me, but I know it didn't get a lot of love, but I enjoyed it for what it was. So
I did
they
not.
were my top 5. So
I
none
did
of
good.
them, you hated it, didn't you? But none of those made, really, to be fair, none of them, apart from Killers of the Flower Moon with cinematography, and that, really made a dent in my film choices this year. Interesting. I wonder though, what
I
about
mean, two of
2024?
five couldn't.
Two of five
So
couldn't, but the other two didn't either. So what's your first kind of most anticipated film of the year?
well, this year's looking weird. While it's slim right now, especially, there's a lot of stuff that it got pushed back because of the strikes and things like that. And we have obviously some movies that we were looking at 2023 that are now 2024. But my number five is one that I think people might think is stupid for me to have on this list, but I'm excited for The Fall Guy. As I mentioned, I love Gosling. I love his comedy. I like Emily Blunt. Let's give them together. I think they're going to have some great chemistry. The trailers look fun. I forget the director's name, but I think he did Bullet Train and is it Leech or
Oh, David Leitch.
yeah, I've liked his movies, even though some people haven't. I've enjoyed them, so I'm like, okay, you're giving me that guy who's done some really fun, crazy action movies. I thought Bullet Train was a lot of fun. That's what I'm hoping for Fall Guy. I'm hoping it's just gonna be a lot of fun, and Gosling is just like in the trailer. There's so many scenes that Gosling's just it's giving me nice guy vibes, and I love that. So I'm just like, yes, give me more of that Gosling. I'm all in. And he's definitely got some Kenergy in that movie, right?
Yeah,
So that's my
he's
number
never
five.
not going to have Kennedy. Mine, I'm going to chuck in Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott's sequel to Gladiator, Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro
Oh,
Pascal, Jimon Hunsao, Barry Keoghan, Connie Nielsen's coming back as well. Russell Crowe, apparently, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but Joseph Quinn is also in the film. I'm just going through the cast list there. It's a big old
yeah.
cast. I'm sure I've forgotten Derek Jacobi. Uh,
I'm
Big old cast. I'm
I just
interested more because
w-
can it work?
I feel like this one's gonna end up on your not seen list again, like the other two movies from this year. I don't think it's coming out this year.
There's
It
that.
supposedly is. I'm just like, there's no way, right? Like, I mean, maybe
For
it
now,
just felt like it was
apparently.
announced. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's on all the list. I'm not as hyped. I did like Gladiator. It's been a minute since I've seen it though, and I
I
don't have any
dig
real
that
desire
film.
to rewatch it. Yeah, it was great when it for sure, for sure. I saw it twice, even in theaters. I didn't love it
There
as
we
much
go
the
then.
second time though. I was just like, yeah, it's really long. Um, all right. My number four, I honestly, I'm going to say two things about it, because that's all I know about it, and that's all I need to know. Mickey 17, Robert Pattinson working with Bong Joon Ho. I'm
Win.
in. New Bong Joon Ho movie. I'm all in. I've seen almost his whole filmography. I love most of his filmography. And he's got a movie with Robert Pattinson, the dude who just seems to be able to act his way through anything, even the freaking crappy Twilight franchise. I'm in. So that's all I need to know. The name, I'm like, is it like the 17th Mickey Mouse? I don't know what's going on here. I have no clue. Don't care.
Funny
It's Bong
name.
Joon Ho and Robert Pattinson. I'm excited for it. Let me see it. Give it to me.
Win. And I take that, my friend. My number four is The First Omen. Well, no, number four. One of them is The First Omen, prequel to one of my favorite horror films, The Omen. Now,
Okay.
if anything, if this year's taught me anything, it's prequels or follow-ups to beloved horror films, classic horror films, don't always go the way you think they're going to go. I'm looking at you, Believer. I enjoyed it. I know everyone else hated it. So I kind of went into The First Omen. I was like, man, this is going to stink. But then I realised that Blumhouse are nowhere near it, which is good. So it might be taken seriously. And I looked at the talent behind it. I'm like, okay, you've got Neil Tiger Freeze in it. well, Bill Nighy's in it, Ralph Ineson, Charles Dance. It's got a
Yes.
very decent cast to it. And I looking at what the story's all about. I thought, okay, that sounds quite good. Wouldn't mind seeing a trailer. Lo and behold, not long before this episode recorded,
Oh,
the trailer has dropped.
I
I
did not
like
know
it.
that.
I really like the look of this. It doesn't really say anything too much
Okay.
about what's going on, but the tone of it looks very good. We're not talking jump scares or anything like that here. It's about feeling. It's about tone. It's evocative. Gets people going. And yeah, it's what I want. I hope it's good. It could be awful, but the
It is
trailer
an
looks good.
April release, I think. So that's a
Yes,
bad sign.
it's not a
Yeah.
good sign, but there's so many films coming out throughout the year. You got to put it somewhere, I guess.
Sometimes there's some really empty weekends already in the first quarter of the year. So like, although
It's,
that was one of the empty weekends, I actually was making our schedule for the BAMP and I left it off because I was like, this looks like it's a B movie. And then I was like, wait, is it connected to the Omen? Which I still didn't know, but you have
it
confirmed
could
that it is.
it could have
Um,
been. It's got everything about it, but then I look at everything about it, and also just as a bit of trivia, not to take up all the time, but Arcadia Stevenson, who's directing this, the reason why I think it's coming out in April, my friend, is because she's also got a film coming. I don't know if anyone knows anything about the Omen. You know, the film has a jackal in it, or at least a reference to a jackal. Very, very huge part of the film. She's got a film coming out, I think maybe next year, called The Jackal, and
oh,
most of the cast in it are in the first Omen. So I'm thinking we've got
okay,
a kind of an X and a Pearl type thing going on, where that film's being made at the same time, and we're going to have two films which are
gotcha.
almost concurrent. So I think that's why they want to get it out early, this one, so they can get this next one out afterwards. But
Okay, well,
speculation,
fingers crossed. I
conjecture,
hope it's
nothing
good.
more than that. But what's next for you, mate?
My number three is Jeff Nichols' new film that was supposed to come out this year that then got delayed to 2024, and it's The Bike Riders. I mean, the cast alone is compelling, but I've really loved Jeff Nichols' films. I've taught Take Shelter, I've taught Mud, I've taught Midnight Special, and I think his last film was Loving. Is that right? Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
he which is crazy because it's been like 6, 7
Been a
years since
while.
his last movie, and I don't know why. But I'm a big fan of his films. This one, Tom Hardy and Elvis. I don't remember Elvis's name.
Austin
Austin
Butler.
Butler. Austin Butler. I got there. Man, I'm all in. I can't wait to see this movie. I wish it. I can't get there soon enough. Uh, so yeah, Jeff Nichols making a film. I want to see it. Again, high expectations.
Yeah, I dig it, my friend. My third one, sticking with horror, Maxine. Maxine. I'm all in for Mia
Oh,
Goth. Dude,
I haven't
it's
seen
coming.
that on the list anywhere, but yeah, please, I cannot wait for that.
I don't think it's
If I
got
had
a.
seen that on my list,
It would be in there.
yeah, it would be in my top five for sure, hands down.
I don't think it's got a set in stone. But it's definitely coming out this year. They've said that. I don't know if it's got a definitive date yet, but X loved it. Pearl, wonderful. Mia Goth, you a Goth, we all Goth. She's can't do no wrong at the minute. Like Infinity Pool was one of my favourite films of the year. It didn't make any of the lists, but it could well have done.
Yeah,
I'm in for anything she does. So Maxine is. I cannot wait for that. Hopefully, top off that trilogy.
agreed. Staying with a similar type of vibe as far as fandom, Anya Taylor Joy, I'm almost in on anything she's attached to, and George Miller's Furiosa prequel to Mad Max Fury Road is
Yes.
coming out. Um, Miller is a filmmaker who's his filmography is so weird and so unique, and I'm just Mad Max Fury Road was a movie that I almost didn't go see in the theater. I was just like, yeah, whatever. I don't really care about fast cars, and then was blown away by that movie. I have seen it multiple times. I am such a fan. It is a masterpiece, and I am hoping he can bring if he can bring half of that to Furiosa, it's going to be a
Yeah.
masterpiece. And if it's better somehow, if he somehow like ups his game, because
Wow.
no one saw Fury Road coming. No one expected Fury Road to
No
do
one.
what it did. If he does that here, man, and I gotta say, with Hemsworth as the villain, I'm like, please let this be incredible. I am a little worried because of the prequel of it all, but at the same time, like the cast and this dude's he's a unique filmmaker, and I'm just really really excited to see Furiosa. I think they're calling it Furiosa the Mad Max Saga or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
They want to make sure people know Mad Max is in it, but he's not. Mad Max is not in it, but that is part of that world.
Didn't make my five actually, which is annoying because it probably should have done. But I had to stick true to my guns, man. Two of my films from last year, spoiler, didn't come out. So my
Oh,
penultimate
okay.
film is Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. Man, listen, we both love. We're a Ghostbusters fan, man. You're a huge
Yeah.
Ghostbusters fan. We both dug Afterlife. We love the service we got as fans in it, and now I'm excited to see where the next chapter goes. Not a huge fan of the title. We've said that before on the show. I think the title's a little bit too comic booky, but we've got the OG back. They've made no secret about the old guard are coming back. You know how long they'll last in the films is we'll see in terms of their characters. But it's Ghostbusters. They're back. Who are you going to call? Hopefully these guys. So I'm looking forward to that one, my man. What about you? What's your last one?
My last one is a surprising one for me if you've paid attention because there's two reasons why this shouldn't be on the list. Robert Edgar's Nosferatu. Um, One, I have yet to find a Nosferatu movie that I love. I have tried all of
Good
them.
point.
I think I might be missing one still. I tend to not like vampire movies. But and I need to rewatch it. I didn't love The Witch. It's a film I feel like I saw at a time that I shouldn't have seen it. I don't think I was ready for that type of horror film, and I've been meaning to go back to it. And I've already mentioned Anya Taylor-Joy, and there she is. But I've loved everything else Eggers has done. I've loved The Lighthouse. I love the Northman. I thought The Northman was incredible. And man, what I've seen for Nosferatu, and what I've heard about, like I think he invented a lens for this movie. Like I'm just
Yeah.
dude, he's a filmmaker that I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna even if I don't like it, I'm hyped for it. And I'm like, maybe finally I'm gonna get a Nosferatu movie that I think is worth my time. Like obviously I have some love for the German Expression original because of what it does, but man, do I think it's boring as heck. And I feel even more so of Herzog's. Herzog's is like, hey, what if we really stretch it out
Still,
and add nothing interesting to it? And I like Herzog, so I'm just like,
but
this story
still,
doesn't work for me. And yet I am really, really hyped for Egger's version of it. So I made it number one. I'm so interested to see what he's doing. I just think it's going to be a really cool film. Maybe it'll finally be one that clicks.
hopefully that should have made my list as well, just because of the eggersness of it all and the talent. But
Yeah,
I had to stick with my guns. My favorite film of 2021, I think, was Dune. Dune Part Two is also now going to make my list. I cannot wait to see what Denis Villeneuve is always a win. I'm still
I
yet
love
to
him.
rewatch Arrival. Need to. I know
Oh God,
you give
I've
me
seen that so
crap for
many
that, but
times.
for not thinking, I thought it was okay when I first saw it. Not great. I need to rewatch it. But since then, Blade Runner, 2049, Dune, just the visuals, everything about what he does is a huge win for me. So, and Doom Part 2, for everything I've seen of it, it looks like it's going to top the first one. It's going to have a bit more action for those who weren't
It
as
does.
into the first one. There's going to be more Zendaya in it for those who are in for more Zendaya. It had to be my most anticipated of the year, and fingers crossed. Will it crack any of the? Will any of our 10 films crack our top list next year? Well, you'll have to tune back in next year to find out. But it's not a bad 10 if I'm being slightly biased. It's not a bad 10.
One that I couldn't find an official release date for it, but Richard Linklater's movie Hitman with Glenn Powell, who Glenn Powell has a co-writing
Yes,
credit. It was
I've
supposed to
heard
come out
good
this year, and
things.
then it got delayed. Me too, and I'm so hyped for it, but I couldn't find confirmation that it's actually coming out this
Yeah,
year. It has to be because people have seen it,
yeah.
like it exists. It's a movie, but I found no date, so I didn't want to
You
put it
get
on the
on the
list. But
Glenn
I
Powell
think that's
hype
an
train
easy
as
like.
well.
I am so on the Glenn Powell hype train.
Yeah,
That dude is a
yeah.
movie star. I think we're finally going to see emerge, and yeah. So, and I like a lot of Linklater stuff. I don't love all of his stuff, but there's some of his movies
Yep.
really, really resonate. As we mentioned, the Before trilogy for both of us, masterclass, right? So, I'm obviously Hitman's not going to do that, but I want to see what this movie is, especially. I think it got pushed back because The Killer and Hitman they felt like maybe were
Yeah.
too
It makes
similar
sense.
in messaging. But either way, folks, that is our Bampies episode for 2023's Year of Cinema. It was a great year. We want to know what you thought. What were your favorite films of the year? Tell us. We love this. Obviously, our list can change. There might be movies that we come back to and we're like, oh, we were way off on that one, or that one was a masterpiece. How did we not put Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom as our number one? What are we thinking?
Or Winnie the
Quantumanium is a
Pooh.
brilliant piece of art. Um, you know, but next week we're gonna really talk art as we are gonna watch the new horror film Night Swim that does have an Oscar nominated actress in it. So, maybe it's great. It's the
Great
the,
point.
the first weekend in January 2024. Usually a good sign. To be fair, we've had a good horror movie in January every year for like the last 4 years. So
Yeah.
maybe it's good. It does not look good, but we're going to talk about it anyway. So Join us as we discuss Night Swim next week. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media. I have lost my train of thought because I got a text message. On Instagram, we're at Bloody Awesome Movie Pod. And Matt, where are we on Twitter? Jesus God, I'm so sorry.
We've done it for
Sean is
6
blowing up
years
my
now.
phone.
Tuna, get lost. We've done it for 6 years. On Twitter, we are at BAMP_podcast. BAMP_podcast.
And we're making some tickety talks now. We're not dancing yet, but maybe I can convince
Yeah.
Matt to do it if he has a few extra drinks, a little spike in the tea, and who knows. But we're
I'll do
at Bloody
anything.
Awesome Movie Pod on TikTok. Facebook, just search Bloody Awesome Movie Podcast. Individually, you can follow me at BerkReviews.com and at BerkReviews on all the social media platforms. Matt, where can they find you?
You can find me whatiwatchtonight.co.uk and just search What I Watched Tonight across all the socials, including Letterboxd.
And if you like the podcast, especially the BAMPie episode, which is probably our longest episode ever, I'm not sure. I don't remember how long last year's was, but we'd love for you to give us a rating on whatever podcast catcher you use to listen. So if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple Tunes, Apple Podcasts, I don't know what they call it anymore. I don't use Apple product.
Looney Tunes.
Give us that 5-star rating. It helps other people find our show, and that's all we're asking for. We're not asking for a whole lot. Just that if you enjoy the content, you help other people find the content so they too can partake and enjoy. There's enough of us to go around. With that, we encourage you to keep watching movies
And stay bloody awesome.